So welcome to Robust Tools. Glad to have everybody here. We've got over 400 registered, and we've got a good portion of that are online. So we got a great, nice program for you today, I hope. Nick, Agar, you want to just step in for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, Nick is going to be our guest turner. And Nick is originally from the UK, lives now in Georgia.
I'm sure you'll translate if necessary.
Of all the places, so he's got this hybrid accent between, the UK and Georgia, but we're working on him and trying to give him a good Midwestern accent like we have here in Wisconsin. Wisconsin, that's right.
I do my best.
You do your best. And Todd, you want to step over here for just a second? Todd is our manufacturing manager, and he's going to be working the cameras and helping with some of the questions and what have you. So Todd's one of our employees. Deb's in the office. She's doing a few emails. We're not taking phone calls today, so please don't call. And in just a few minutes, we're going to give a shop tour, and we're going to do this via video. We have a video that we shot, and I thought you guys would be more excited to see the shop in action rather than me walking around static when nobody is here. And then we're going to have a little Q&A period after that, answer any questions that you guys might have. I'm going to talk a little bit about the American Beauty that Nick is going to be turning on, and then we're going to turn Nick loose for a demo. And in between all that, we're going to give away some door prizes too. And we got a great slate of door prizes donated by our dealers, some by Chromacraft that Nick works with. And there'll be more about those as we go through. For door prizes, you will need to email us that you acknowledge that you won the door prize with your name and address and et cetera. And as well as the number of the door prize that you want. Now, if you forget your door prize number, don't sweat it. We'll keep track of that. But you do have to email us to claim your prize. Any unclaimed prizes are going to be donated to our local AAW chapter, which is Badger Woodturners, for their fundraising activities. So none of this is going to go to waste. So any active questions right now that we need to take care of, Todd?
I'll step out of the way. My mic's off.
Okay. Thank you. So we're going to switch over to that video now if we don't have any active questions. Okay, you want to go to camera 4? All right.
Howdy, I'm Brand English, Robust Tools. It's a beautiful day here in downtown Barneveld, Wisconsin. And we're going to give you a little tour of Robust Tools. This is our building in my background. And the boys are all busy working inside. So let's go in and see what they're up to. We bought this building in 2012. At the time, it seemed really big, but now we feel like we're starting to outgrow it a little bit. We do not have a retail area. When you come into the shop, you walk right onto the lathe assembly floor. All the lathes are fully assembled and test ran before we ship them. On the floor today, we have 3 American Beauties, as well as 2 Sweet 16s that we're working on. Over in the Scout area, we're putting some final touches on a Scout. We just put the Made in America sticker on it, and now a safety sticker on the guard, and vinyl transfer decal for the headstock. It says Scout, and we're pretty fussy about its placement. Like it to look really nice. And that's how the customer will see it. Back on the production floor, Todd, our manufacturing manager on the left, is discussing some next steps with Joe, our CNC programmer. We've got some parts that have been previously machined on the CNC lathe that need to go through the mill. These are spindle parts. This specific one is a spindle lock block. When you lock the spindle and the rod in the headstock comes up and engages the spindle, this is the part that it goes on to. We're machining this in our Haas vertical mill with a 4th axis. You can see the milling cutter working around, and that's what the final part looks like. I mentioned the CNC lathe a moment ago, and we're running some parts on it today too. We're doing side one of our cup drive. The cup drive is an alternate to the spur drive. And we're turning the Morse taper end of the cup drive right now. And Mike is loading the lathe up, and it's hard to get a good shot of the lathe in operation, but we'll stick the camera in the window for just a second. You see it start up. Coolant starts spraying around there and makes it hard to see. This part gets 100% inspection. We start out with a 3/8 inch wall structural steel tube that's 8 inch by 8 inch. We set it up on the diamond and weld these saddles on. And these saddles will be used to support the ways. You can see we've got really good ventilation for the welder, and he's wearing his own air system to keep his air nice and clean. When Brock's done welding, he goes through and he cleans 100% of the weld spatter off. He really pays a great deal of attention to the quality of work that he does. And I'm going to show you some of his welds. There's really no reason to buy a robot when you got a welder who can do this quality of work. Here's a lathe bed just back from powder coating. We use a color called silver vein. You can see they do a really nice job. After it's powder coated, we surface grind the top of the ways to make them nice and smooth and flat. Really makes the stainless steel shine. We run coolant during this operation because it generates quite a lot of heat. Tool rests are a big part of our business. Some of you may know all of our tool rests have a hardened rod on the top that is really hard to nick or ding. Right now, Donnie is welding up some comfort rests. He also has some low profile rests that he's going through. So he's welding the post on right now. And Don's really proficient at this, and he can really crank these tool rests out. Here's some of the finished ones, all ready to go out on order for a dealer. We have about 44 different tool rests that we make. Most of them are in stock, and then we also make custom ones too. All of our castings come from foundries here in Wisconsin, and all of them need a little prep work before they go out for powder coating. And Brock, the same fellow that does a wonderful job of welding, he preps most of the castings. And we have a downdraft table that takes care of most of the dust. And then he also is wearing some personal protection equipment. We're starting to make some real inroads with our Turner's Edge line of cutting tools. There's some gouges that are in process. I'm going to show you a little bit of the milling operation. Joe's loading up some fixtures right now. And here, this is just the end of the cycle that puts the flat along the full length that helps you with your grinding jig. We're going to do a tool change, and we'll see how the flutes are cut. This will be the first part of the roughing operation. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but we'll catch a little bit of the roughing operation for the flutes. And you can see the flute being cut there. All the gouges get a rough grind before they go out to heat treat. We just do this on a belt sander, do our finish grinding later. And then this is our very first lot of negative rake scrapers and round nose scrapers. And these will all be marketed under the Turner's Edge brand. And these particular ones are M42. Over in our assembly area, Charlie is putting some finish gouges together. We now offer our gouges with and without handles. We have 5 different gouges right now that we're doing. 5/8 bowl gouge, a 1/2 inch spindle and bowl gouge, and a 3/8 spindle and bowl gouge. Well, here's Brock again. He helps pack these lathes before they go out for shipment. They all get wiped down. They're all shipped out, fully assembled in a full box crate. Hey, that concludes our little tour. Thanks for stopping by. Learn more about us on our website, turnrobust.com, or visit any of our dealers. Have a good day.
Well, that concludes that video, and hope you guys enjoyed that. And we'll turn that off, minimize that. We don't need that anymore. Just a reminder to submit your questions online. And we're going to go over and draw some door prizes just to get you guys in the mood. So we got 7 door prizes that we're going to give away. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each one and the dealer that provided it. And so we need this information from you if you're the winner. Let's get the camera right closer up on top, or I get the, yeah, we're going to move this over better. Give us just a second, folks. This is all new to us. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Okay, then camera 3. Okay, our first door prize is from turningwood.com, and Steve Wooster is the proprietor down there, and he makes some really killer sandpaper packages for sale, and a bunch of different sizes. And this particular set is 2-inch Abernet, and there's 4 or 5 different grits in here. There's a sanding mandrel, and we've thrown in a hat to sweeten up the deal just a little bit on that. And Todd, the winner on that is?
Bob Mitchell.
Bob Mitchell. So Bob, if you're watching, send us an email and we'll provide you with this door prize. Door prize number 2 is from a fellow that probably shouldn't need too much of an introduction to this crew, David Ellsworth. And David has been doing howling forever and a day, and has really been one of the people that have pioneered hollow forms in wood turning. So this is a set of his tools, both the straight one and the angled one. And if you haven't taken a class from David, boy, I'll tell you, put it on your bucket list. And the winner of this is?
Mark Rayberg, Rehberg.
Mark Rayberg, Rehberg. Wonderful. Okay, Mark, let us know. This takes longer in person when we have our regular, in-person open houses, because we got to hand these out and whatnot, and it goes pretty quick when we're just doing it online. So this is a robust live center, and all of our live centers are threaded at the end. If I can get the darn tip off, are threaded at the end for putting a cone on or some other accessory. The tip expands in and out by loosening the set screw. We've got a great big thrust bearing in the back here, a big radial thrust bearing that takes the load. And so these have been real popular, and we're selling, you get one with a lathe if you buy a lathe, but we sell them individually, as do many of our dealers. So the winner on this one, Todd?
Antone Forneris, Forneris. Antone Forneris.
Is that coming through? Maybe you should put a mic on. Antone Forneris, okay. Number 4, another robust one, tool rest of your choice. So we have our comfort rest, low profile rest, mini rests, small and large J's, interior and exterior curved, box rest. Any one of them you want, value is between $44 and $98. You tell us what you want, specify the make and model of your lathe just to make sure we get you the right post and everything. And we'll send you one of those out. And that's door prize number 4.
Wayne Sargo, S-A-R-G-O.
Wayne Sargo, S-A-R-G-O. Okay. Door prize number 5. You saw in the video that we were going over. We've started coming out with our Turner's Edge brand of gouges and tools. Let's see if I can get that. You get our logo there, on there. So Turner's Edge, manufactured by Robust. And we make the gouges right here. We have the handles are made for us by a commercial outfit out in Pennsylvania, all out of Hard Rock, Pennsylvania. Maple stainless steel ferrule. This is a 3/8 inch bowl gouge. And the winner on that, Todd?
Joe Williamson.
Joe Williamson, prize number 5. Prize number 6 is the same thing, only different. This is the detail splash / spindle gouge version of the one you just saw. This is another 3/8 inch gouge that we make here with a nice maple handle and stainless steel ferrule. And the winner on that, Todd?
Is Nick Rayberg. Rehberg.
Rehberg. We've got 2 Raybergs. Mark won number 2 and Nick won this one, number 6. Number 7 is another package of tool of sandpaper from our friends Steve Wooster at turningwood.com. And Steve does a lot of charity stuff. He donates a lot of stuff for various causes. Don't be afraid to patronize Steve. He does a really wonderful job. This is Mirka, and I don't know, between Mirka and Abranet, I don't know which one I like the best, but another set of 2-inch discs with a mandrel, and we've thrown in a Robust hat.
That goes to Robert Henriksen.
Robert Henriksen. Okay, number 7. That's this round of door prizes. We're going to have 2 more rounds, and then there's a grand prize at the end of the event. I just want to let you know the grand prize is a elbow turning tool from Tim Yoder and a carving stand that Nick is going to actually demonstrate from Trent Bosch Studios, as well as another Robust tool rest and a Robust hat. Do we have any questions?
We have questions on audio, so we'll try to work on that.
So there's questions on some audio. Some people are having some problems with the audio.
We have a question on when will the negative rake scrapers and skews be available?
Oh, what a great question. Well, we don't have the skews machined yet, but the question is when will the negative rake scrapers and the round nose scrapers that we pictured be ready? They're going up for heat treat on Monday. So they'll be shipped out on Monday. We probably get them back in about 2 weeks. Then we need to do some final grinding and sharpening packaging. So you can sure be ready for Christmas presents, if not before. Other questions? I'm going to talk about the lathe for a minute. That's good. Okay, are we done with questions? Okay, hey, thanks for those questions, and I hope you all get the door prizes that you're after, and there's more of those. There's more of those coming. So I want to talk a little bit about the American Beauty. This is our #1 seller, the American Beauty. It's our first lathe, and it's the biggest seller. I'm just going to give you a little introduction to it, and then we're going to turn Nick over and let him start turning. So if you have questions about this lathe as we're going, please send them into the question thing, and Todd will relay them to me. So we've been making this lathe since 2005, which seems like forever ago. And it's gone through some changes in those years, but if you saw the very first one that we made, which I still own, and you set it next to this one, from across the room, it'd be hard to tell any difference, but when you got closer, you'd see a lot of little improvements, a lot of things that have come from you folks that have given us ideas about how to make the machine better. So starting from the bottom, Todd, if you don't mind pointing the camera down towards the down towards the Rake here. Just starting from the bottom, all the legs are adjustable. So all 4 legs are adjustable. So we can put this lathe at any height that we want, relative to what you want to do. And the floor plan is pretty open, so you can get your legs around the machine. You get up close to the machine without a lot of interference. There isn't a web here or anything like that that interferes with getting your foot around the lathe. And the taller you make it, the wider the legs get, so you actually don't lose any stability by raising it up. So if you want to come up just a little bit, Todd. Okay, that's good right there. So you saw in the video that we use a square tube placed on the diamond. And what that does is it gives you a lot of clearance to let your chips fall away. So we also have the raise up fairly high off of the bed. So that gives you nice clearance. Your raised bed sort of self-cleans. And that makes everything go a lot smoother. So you don't have shavings piling up in here and interfering when you're moving your banjo and what have you. You want to come up on the headstock, Todd? So the headstock slides and comes all the way back here if you want to turn a long spindle. And if you want to turn a ball off the end of the lathe, or even stand at the end of the lathe, you can slide down to the end and stand at the end of the lathe. And one of the nice things about a sliding headstock lathe is, even if you're doing a really little piece, standing at the end of the lathe really helps you get it done. So it makes it the whole turning experience more comfortable, and you can see what you're doing a lot better. It comes standard with a 2 horsepower motor. Almost everybody gets the 3 horsepower motor. This has got the 3 horsepower on it. You won't be able to see it in this shop, but it's a two-pulley arrangement. So you've got a high-speed setting, and you've got a low-speed, high-torque setting. And that's where we're at right now, is in the high-torque setting. Pardon me?
I get that camera 1.
Oh yeah, great, camera 1. So here's the two pulley positions. Here's your high-speed turning, and here's your low-speed pulley position. Indexing is built in right here. There's 48 positions. If you can see that the hand wheel is graduated. And we have a screw-in indexer, which is a little slower than a sliding pin that most places use. The thing with a sliding pin is there's always slop. There's slop in the pin hole, and then there's slop in the hole in the hand wheel. So when you have this tapered screw going into the hand wheel, I think you can see that. When you have that going into the hand wheel, it locks it. It locks it really securely. It locks it to the point where I can set up a router jig out here on the outboard side of the lathe, and I can put flutes in a table leg or something like that. And it holds it securely enough to do a nice clean job with that. If you just had a pin in there, the spindle's moving just a little bit, and as your router bit is making the cut, the whole thing is moving. So this really makes it nice and tight. It's a little slower, but we gave up speed for accuracy. Okay, let's go back to camera 3, and I want to demonstrate the tilt-away. And Nick is waiting in the wings. He's chomping at the bit to get turning for you guys. So one of our favorite features, and I think the American Beauty is a really good lathe just the way it is. Of course, I'm a little biased, but I think when you add the tilt-away, you really take it up to a next level. Now, there's a lot of other tilt-away solutions where they just swing away the tailstock, swings over, gets positioned over here. So it's still in the way. It's just in a different position. So what we do with the tilt-away, and some of you guys are owners and you know this gets the tailstock completely out of the way, and it stores it so it's readily available for when we need to use it again. And it allows me to come down and stand here at the end of the machine and turn. So I can do what I want, and I can get all the way around the lathe. I can stand over here, and I can come all the way around to the end here, So I've got over 180 degrees of access to the work. And I think that's one of the things that even you guys that, Powermatic 3520 is a really popular machine. And that has a sliding headstock. I'm always surprised at how many owners of 3520 that I talk to that don't take advantage of the sliding headstock in that aspect. We also have an outboard turning attachment, and we've got this lathe set up with it. And so if you want to do big work, turn off the end of the machine, we have this attachment here that you can set up and do outboard turning. And even sometimes if you're setting up a big, long hauling rig, if you're doing a really deep form on the American Beauty, you can use this as just a support for your hauling rig, even if you're not turning outboard. But people do big wall hangings, tabletops, and what have you off the end of the lathe this way. And the tilt lathe does not interfere with using the outboard, so you can continue to do all the stuff that you're used to doing. The clock on the wall tells me it's just about time to wrap up here and let Nick start his turning. So do we have any questions about this lathe before we turn Nick loose? Oh, well, yeah, we'll do a belt change here. I'll put this here, and if you want to switch the camera, the overhead camera. Okay. So I think I can zoom out a little bit. Yeah, zoom out a little bit. So I'm going to open this front panel. You want to just show camera 2 for a minute? Okay, so I'm going to open this front panel. Matter of fact, I think this is a perfectly good way to show it. I'm going to loosen this clamp handle right here, and I'm going to just lift the motor up, and that loosens the belt. Okay, so I can get the belt moved, and I can get it positioned on the next pulley. And we use a poly groove V-belt. These are 10 grooves. They do an excellent job of transmitting the power. We've never had anybody wear out a belt. So you can get access on both pulleys. And then to tighten it down, I just say rule of thumb, no more than, you don't need any more pressure than what you can do with putting on your thumb to transmit the full power of the lathe. Then lock that down and then close these back up. That was a good question, Nick. Thank you. Any other questions that have come up?
Yeah, so Wayne Leaf.
Oh, Wayne, I know Wayne. He's up in northern Wisconsin.
So he wants to point out, be sure to point out while turning on the end, also keeps you out of line of fire.
Oh, Wayne said, yeah, go to camera 3 there. Wayne mentions Wayne's one of our owners. He said in American Beauty for 7 or 8 years now. He came down to the shop and picked it up, and maybe even longer than 7 or 8 years. So one thing he mentions is turning at the end of the machine, you are out of line of fire. So if anything bad happens, you're in a much safer position by turning at the end of the lathe. Good point, Wade. Thank you. Other questions?
How do you keep the legs from settling on an A-B? Over time, mine drops and I have to raise it and lever it.
Well, you may not just be tightening the leg clamps tight enough, you know. So there's you want to zoom down here. So the question was, his legs are moving on him over time as he's turning big stuff and whatnot. And there's a clamp bit right here where you clamp the leg after you've made your adjustment. And there's one on each leg. We don't have a lot of contrast right now because it's a black bolt on a black part, but you may just not have that tight enough. So that would be my first suggestion to you. You know, give that an extra tug on the wrench when you tighten it up. Are there other questions there? That's about it for now. And we'll continue to take your questions. We're going to turn this over to Nick, and Nick's going to try to do a demo he normally does in 90 minutes. He's going to try to do that in 60 minutes. So he's going to ask you to hold your questions until the end. Let me see, I think you want to be down just a little bit further for this camera, right about here. And I may have whacked that. Yeah, there you go.
Are we on high speed now?
I'm on the low speed. Do you want on high speed?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm going to switch this over to high speed for Nick, quick. You're not going to be like Jimmy Clews, are you?
No one can be like Jimmy
No one can be like Jimmy Clews. Okay. There we go. I'm going to turn my mic off. And Nick, you want to do a mic check on yours?
Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. Mic, mic. Okay, I guess we go to camera. We'll come down a little bit. Hello, everybody. Great to be here in the factory where wonderful machine is made. And keep it interesting. Come up with this one for Brent and you guys, which is a vase for a wall. It's worth a lot more money, so be careful how you describe it. My microphone is, but maybe this needs to go through there a little bit more. I can put it on my beard. We're trying the buttonholes. We tested this morning, of course, it works perfectly, but you know how life is. Anyway, you'll probably need to translate, Brent. That sounds better. You have to give us a thumbs up because we can't hear what you're hearing.
Turn you.
There you go.
Okay.
I'll try not to fire too many chips at it. Okay. All right, back to that lathe I was talking about. So this design not only crisped up my spindle gouge work, it sold. And I'd have to come into the studio and make 4 every morning whilst the kettle was on for the first coffee, I guess. So we'll get on with this. I need to get my other special being the most important. I got a safety drive in the robust here, which is favorable for those of you who are learning. Going to pick the piece between. This is just a boring piece of maple, and I would make most of mine out of branch wood at the time, out of yew and the bone. Now, to explore a little bit more of my own personality on the wood, as we might put it. Now, you may well choose to use a spindle roughing gouge to take this down. I'm going to use a bowl gouge with a fingernail profile on it. The reason I wouldn't use a spindle roughing gouge necessarily on a branchwood piece because I may have contrasting grain directions and it can be a little bumpy, but also the spindle roughing gouge tends to be a larger tool. As I get next to a piece I wanted to keep, I found the bowl gouge did a great job for it. And rough this one down. A spare one. Microphone gets louder when I dip the face shield. So I do know that you may have to adjust your volume when we come to that part. So we're going to go to the overhead view now, if we can, Tom, and look at this piece. Get this so that the tool is sitting on the tool rest at the center height of rotation. So the cutting tip of my tool is pretty much in the center line of access. I'm just going to lean in, put the speed to somewhere that's comfortable. With my thumb behind the tool and just come in the edge. Get up a little bit more. Get that under tension as much as you what we do. Rough this one down. What we can see is that by doing so, cutting into an empty space, then I've not got any extra wood in front of the tool there. And I don't break out any wood that I might want to keep off these corners. So what we want to run into here. Now, each to his own, but of course it may be a good idea to cut the last remaining piece off towards a headstock, whether you change hands or you're doing it with the hand you're using is entirely up to you. Once I get a finger down that gap, I tend to move forwards and get closer so that I can now get the piece in line for where I do my. We'll cut this down. I'm running a class in Iowa, and I left my calipers behind. These I'm trusting my eyeball. I'm just going to sweep that up with the screws. I'm using a dovetail, and we'll just take this completely around. The way the edge is presented at the moment is not unlike as if it was a Spindle roughing gouge, but I can also drop the handle down once I've got it round and go into a, which is the same you might do with the screw. So just dropping the handle down here, I get a different shoulder and a much better finish. This piece is 6.5 inches long. I normally want about 7 inches of stock for this. It's just a good sort of proportion. Now with my knockout bar, make sure I put my hand over the end so I don't fire this off the lathe. Point. Maybe create on part or best get it close up and we get used to doing this, but not used to doing virtual from the factory. So we'll keep this as visually interesting as you can. Now that we switch to camera number 2 just for the hell of it, so we can have a look at what we're looking at. There we go. So I've got some dovetail jaws. I'm going to place the 10 in those dovetail jaws and do the piece up just so. And this has a previous point in it, of course, from when I just roughed it out between centers. But this is not necessarily running true. So it's a good idea for me to clean this area first before I engage the tailstock. Stay off a minute, Todd. We'll just do that. Bring the tool around. Nip up on a tenon, the piece will run a little bit out. This is running pretty true. I'm just going to screw up the end surface here. About 45 degrees. Just going to. So just entering the corner, down we go. Just going to make it a lot cleaner. Vibration there, and the noise. If you're wondering what the buzzing was. Okay, got that, we'll give it a extra tight and make sure everything's looking. And talk about how. Right, that's really nice. Pretty much into three, we're going to have a trumpet-shaped top, a sort of apple or heart-shaped body, then a small stem before we get to the foot. We're going to do it in three. Take some space to work with. The wall, I'm going to space to work within, about an inch down from the top. Just clear that up again. Now, looking at the gouge before I carry on, it's a bowl gouge with a fingernail grind on it. Maybe get you all there, zoom in and have a closer look at it. A spindle gouge. I'm just going to reach behind me and get. Here's a spindle gouge. Next to that, they look very similar until we look down the flute. So the one that is moving is the spindle gouge, and this one here with the deeper flute is the bowl gouge. And I have the bowl gouge in my hand, as you've just seen, for doing the rest of the work. So we'll get back on it to the above camera and we work. And the tools they choose. This has worked well for me, and it's been 30 years now since my apprenticeship, 33 years ago, and I just find that this has worked really well. So I'm just cutting downhill from the top of that form to make that lovely delicious looking toe. Then I'm going to start to roll the bead on the top of the body towards that. So it's exactly the same procedure that we would use for a spindle gouge, only I'm using a fingernail bowl gouge because it works so beautifully and stably. So it's good practice rolling that bead into that cove. Now, of course, this isn't going to get all the way down to the narrow part because it's too fat. It's going to be in my way. And the angle of the grind on this tool is 45 degrees. And I'm more likely to get my spindle gouge to 35, let's say. So that's kind of on the limit of where that tool got me, but it got me there very efficiently and very well. Apparently, I got to talk a little louder, put a little bit of accent on so y'all can understand what I'm talking about. I will do my very best, but keep them coming and let us know whatever you can see or can't see. Remember, there's 3 guys in a factory here who are woodworkers and metalworkers. We are not film cameramen normally, but we will do our best to keep everything fun. And anyway, if this was just done under music, it should be fun to watch. So we'll keep going, and I'm going to come back in now with a smaller spindle gouge. I do tend to speak a little fast because I get excited with what I'm doing. I'm excited to be at the robust factory and see where these beautiful machines are made. So belly rubbing on the back of that toe, picking up the cut. I need to do perhaps one more journey around here, cutting just below the center of the flute with that cut. So I'm happy where the 2 shapes meet at around about 3/4 of an inch. Be careful when you're rotating the tool in that area. So we've got a nice spout on the top here. The next thing we're going to do before we drill is cut into the top of this part here. So we will need to go to the other end there, Todd, and look at camera number 2, I believe, if I remember. All these cameras to remember. So the end grain fibers are coming this way. The grain runs up the piece. So this is what I would term as side grain, and this is end grain. So cutting down into the end grains not always going to be easy nor a good idea. So we're going to slice as much as we can down towards that center. And again, it might surprise you, but I'm going to pull out a 1/4 inch bowl gouge instead of the spindle gouge here to do this. It just works very well. Again, be careful of the edge. You don't want to burst this edge that we've put on. And I'm going to start by taking a little bit out the middle. Get the speed to where you are happy with it. And then listen for vibration. Of course, you could have drilled first, but I tend to do it this way. I get a better feel for the vibration. Quite a long way off the chuck, guys. Headstock Chuck. Now I'm using an Axminster SK114 here, and it has an integrated thread on it. So it actually gets me a little closer to the headstock. So a good system indeed for that. But I'm cutting across those fibers by cutting slightly into it still. I have to be careful. So I'm beginning to go in. We'll stop the lathe and have a little look at the quality of the cut. Be careful of that little pimple in the middle there. So I'm just going to zoom in myself. I have to step over this camera to do this. But we can see the quality of that cut being much better. Now, of course, I can pull cut out with this, and I will need to in a moment when I've got further down inside. But while I can get across the top of those fibers with a push cut or bevel-wrapping cut, I will. So we couldn't go down inside a goblet all the way with this cut so efficiently. But this is working beautifully. You can see by the way the shavings are coming off. If it starts to resist you and starts to vibrate, just take less of a cut and work your way to it. So we're almost at the point where I'm going to drill. Need to reach behind me and get my drill chuck out. Okay, we'll come back a little bit now. Just zoom out on that one. Bring the tailstock back up into place. Love that tilt tool. It's so good. I've never had any occasion ever in my school using these with it not lining up. It lines up perfectly every time. That is one of those you get what you pay for deals, I'm sure. And I'm extremely grateful for it being there. Okay, now I don't have a Forstner bit with me. I couldn't locate mine before I left, so I'm going to use a twist drill bit. A Forstner bit is much better than a twist drill. A twist drill will tend to always want to wander off in the easiest direction. But Forstner bits tend to only come regularly off the shelf at about 3 inches in length. So you could drill down yay far with your Forstner bit, and a sawtooth tip would be best, and then put this in afterwards and it will follow that path. But we got what we got. So hopefully this will behave itself. Going to slow the speed down. A good thing to have around with you would be a blob of maybe a candle wax or a lump of wax when you're drilling to lubricate this to stop the wood swelling. Material. Always keep one hand on the Jacob's chuck. Not because if it does come loose, it will burn your hand, but just have immediately a message. And maybe if you want to move your switch around so it's more adjacent to you, if you have to use this hand suddenly to turn the machine off, then again, the movable wand is very useful to be able to do that. So let's drill in. Maybe I've done this a lot of times, but it may be good to do that good old fashioned stick a bit of tape on for your depth marker. And remember, I'm trying to do this in an hour. But putting a bit of tape, having marked the depth, would be useful because I don't want to drill so far through that I have a hole in my vase at the bottom. Okay, that will do me there. That's looking nice. Got my finger marking the point on the tailstock where it's going to come off. So I'm about the bottom of that little apple shape I'm going to put on there. Now all that remains to be done is to consider a bit of hollowing through this end here. Move this out of the tilt away. And we're going to come back to camera number 2. Let me get a little slurp of water. I can keep talking. I'm going to go back to this gouge to start with. So we've been doing push cuts. Now I'm going to be doing a pull cut. I'm going to lean the flute over, almost completely closed, just a little fraction open, and use about 1/3 of that available edge. And this will be a draw cut. And it's pretty much a scraping cut, really, but it does a good job. You may hear a little bit of vibration. You've got to be careful with this, guys who are new to this, that this is very much a closed flute. I'm going to bring my hand to the front of the ferrule and support it under my arm, right there, and then overhand grip on the top. And then I'm going to come just up to the side of that hole and stroke the wood off. I'm going to run the cut out before I get to the rim. You can already hear it chattering when I get up there. So go at this real carefully. Slowly run that out. You can drift up and down, and you've got to keep an eye on, of course, the wall thickness throughout this whole journey. So be on guard. Another thing that may be appropriate is to move the headstock down the lathe, as Brent just showed us. There's that little tremor. Move the headstock down at the end so that you can stand really opposite this and perhaps have the handle of the tool even the same way you might when you're hollowing next to you. Now, I think hollowing is a boring thing to watch happen. So I'm going to do very little of it, but I'm going to show a couple of tools. The first one is a Carbide Tip Tool, and this one has a 23-degree angle downwards on. And I'm going to just bring this in sideways with the tool slightly over on its side. And then we're going to bring my hand forward again and support it under the forearm. So let's do that. Let me put the switch back where it is. Overhand grip, over on its side, making sure that when I cut, I'm eyeballing it to be below the joint where the neck meets the rim of the piece. Otherwise, I can come through here on the neck very easily. And even again, if you mark with a pen by placing it inside before you start to cut sideways, that might not be a bad idea. So you're going to get a little bit of vibration and you will get some noise. This is part of the deal. Now, of course, another thing that may not have been mentioned, but you might have seen earlier, which is a real useful thing. And again, I asked for this to be on all my lathes in my school, is the foot switch. So particularly when you're hollowing, this is a real advantage. So what you're going to observe now is me stopping the machine by foot. So I would click it. It only turns it off. It doesn't turn it on again, but it's super useful. So if we go to camera 2, I'm inside my vessel at the moment. I've got quite a few shavings in there. I feel they start to bite the end of the tool. I hit the foot switch. I leave the tool inside the wood. Now I can safely remove it without the chance of catching it on the side. And I think, Brent, you kindly offered me some air. It's still there. So you say eyes to clear out some of the dust, and you carry on with your hollowing. Now that takes about 10 minutes or so, and I then open up and expand to about 40%, 50% of the inside of that, just to make it lighter. I'm not trying to make it eggshell thin. So I dig around in there and I keep clearing the dust. The tool is actually going side to side to side, and every time I make a side cut, I'm pulling slightly uphill towards the turner. And then I just do a little clear up rub, but there's always space in front of that tool for it not to get caught into. If I just plunge it into completely a mouthful of wood, it is going to bite rather hard. So just be careful and perhaps practice this in an area with a much bigger hole where you can see what the tool does. Then we move more into David Ellsworth's realm. We need to get right around that corner. So this is a homemade job, but not unlike some lucky winner just got from David, who's very kindly donated those tools. This is a round nose. It's a scraper tip, but it's going to get me around this corner. And once again, enter this. I'm going to facing down. I'm going to have the tool handle under my. That's it. Come around that corner and eyeball on below that rim. And cut underneath that. 2 or 3 cuts, hit the foot switch if they remove the tool. Can't tell you how that wonderful that foot switch is for some of the work that I like to do. And I do wall pieces, big pieces as well. And I tell you now, I would not be without that foot switch because I don't want to be reaching round work either that's a jaggedy edge. So we won't go on boring ourselves with this end bit. Let's stay on camera 2. As long as we have a nice shadow that visibly comes around the corner, if you drill that hole the correct size, your average wood turner shouldn't be able to get pinky in there and feel how rough it is on the inside. So we're all good, okay? Now this does need finishing completely. And if you're going to be polishing this surface, the whole job needs doing on the face of the vase right now to finish. I'm just going to poke a couple of bits of abrasives at it just for good measure, but I don't want to breathe in any more dust than the cameraman does. So we'll just do this sort of as a matter of course so that you get the idea of how things should look. Slow it down a little when you're sanding. I find supporting the wrist with the other hand will help you from slipping across, and roll a tube in whatever abrasives you have to clean the inside. So I'm not able to get to sand the inside, but with a decent sharp tool, you'll get a better finish than you might think. So we start a sandpaper auction, go 180, 180, 180, 180, 180. Give me more than 180, got 180. Probably needed 120 flexible gouge by the look of my tooling on the front there. But 180, 180, 180, 180, 180. Let's move up there to 240, 240, 240. 240, 240, 240. Make sure we don't forget the top of that edge, Nick. 240, 240, 240, 320, 320, 320, 320, 320, 320. And then we jump into 600 because I couldn't find my 4. So basically that is done. And we polish it. Make sure you remove any dust with your air and give it a buff beforehand, and you move on to the next bit. Now we're going to support that. And Brent, you don't have a small piece of paper towel that you can find for me somewhere? What I'm going to do here, guys, is support the top of the vessel with the live center. And the nice thing again about this live center is that it's threaded. And the size of the thread is, for you Americans, what's the size of this thread?
Oh, 3/4 10.
3/4 10. So it fits a bunch of other components that are out there. But we have our standard nice sharp comb which fits on the front. We might need to go to the above angle to see that one. But also, depending on the shape of some of your vessels, there's another cone which can be aptly shaped to fit inside a vessel. Now I'm just going to offer this up. I think I'm probably going to use the smaller one, but we'll see. I think I'm going to use the smaller guy. Just pick this straight off the factory floor. So it's nice and clean, but yours may well be slightly grubby. So what I do here is just I pop a piece of paper towel over that, and only a thin piece because it will cause a crease as it goes into the cone, and just my finished area. This one's just a little bigger than I need, and the expanse of it may push on the top of the rim earlier than it does the inside. So that's my reason for doing that. Watch when you turn this on that your paper doesn't affect your turning or bother you. You can always tear little bits off by hand, and don't over tighten because you'll split it, of course. So now we're going to move on to the body, and we're going to turn this area. Quick as we can. Well, move the tourist in a bit further, Nick. Getting ahead of myself. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. So I'm going to go back to that bowl gouge once more. And I'm going to start below and remove wood I can afford to lose and keep wood that I want to keep. So again, make some space to cut into. If you're too greedy with this cut, you'll probably find that the wood bursts off. Excuse me, I need a drink. So give it a chance to be cut. Don't be too greedy. Small cuts like that are fine. I'm trying to get on either a heart shape or an onion shape, or some of you might refer to this as a part of an egg, whatever you want to see. But perhaps the most important thing is about 1/3 of that shape. The highest point is going to be near the top. Take that around. As far as you can, make some space to work. Until again, this is now not performing so well. So I can get back to my either a skew, those of you who are very proficient with the skew, and my spindle gouge is going to get me in closer here also. But it won't get me all the way. What I want to do is a bit like a large golf tee. I want to support this form on the top of a stand, which is not unlike that of a wine glass or goblet. So I'm going to come in there as far as I can, leading that short over. But if I want to get a really nice shadow at this joint where these two pieces meet, then I will need to go into that with the skew. Being careful with the skew to have the bevel on that one side, coming around and just putting it in there, and then doing one side of a bead with the other side of it. Throws that into a really nice junction. I might be able to reach up. We don't have electric zooms here. Get us a little closer. There we go. You know, I wish I did that 10 minutes ago, don't you? But there you go. I'm obviously lagging behind in that department of ideas. Now, before I turn this thin, I need to sand the remaining part of the body and the underside of the rim. So I'm going to stop the lathe. Rather than back the tool rest right out, I might as well just remove the tool rest completely out of my way. And I can sand this. And I tend to sand from beneath so that I can see what I'm doing, because I don't want to affect the form. It's side grain, it sands pretty quickly. Remember, this is a boring piece of wood, and I will be going at it with a little bit of decoration. If you're going to be using a knurling tool or some of those tools which have a revolving cutter on the tip, then of course you want to do that on the body now before you make this too thin. But sand up to finish so that you're happy with the results. Folding abrasives to fit into places is useful. Now I'm being spoilt here, I've got my discs, but folding in half gives me a crease. Folding into 3 and then folding again may give me a nicer curve, fit into an area that I'm sanding. So certainly think about that rather than just laying in with your abrasives, because you might very much sand away a nice shape that you just put on there. So we won't labor too much on this, as I promised not to. I'm going to put a bit of color on this one, so I don't want to see any tooling lines, if at all possible. So we're almost done. And of course, you will be wearing a mask and have your dust extraction on when you're doing this. I do have a mask with me, but all you would be hearing would be, which wouldn't be even any more entertaining. But I know one of you just said, well, you'd be better off with that on, actually, Nick, but I'm doing it so you can hear. There's a nice bit of figuring in this, bit of curl in this wood too. Curl can be a problem to cut through if you have a skew that maybe not a good angle, a slightly fatter angle may chip it out. But whichever way suits you, we're getting to this point we're at now. So now we're going to put the tool rest back in and reach the stem part. Back to my bowl gouge. Slowly working forwards, always taking care. You make the decision of where you place your tool rest. And how many hundreds of tool rests did you say you had, Brent? It was 40 something, wasn't it? 44 varieties of tool rests that Robust makes. So you haven't really got any excuses. If you buy all 44, there ain't much you can't reach, right? So you make the decision of how close the tool rest is going to be to your chuck. I don't personally like working on the very end of a tool rest. So the reason I'm going past the chuck is it gives me greater support, which is in line with the stem of the tool rest currently. So let's just throw that in. What we're trying to create here is a position to repeat that shape just below that joint there. So I want a small cove right at that point where they meet. So I don't want to go too much material away. Just start to take it away from there. Also, we're going to have to remember we need a safety zone. So a good 1/4 inch of material is going to remain to protect any tool that comes up near to the jaws of the chuck, because that's not a great idea. And then perhaps the thickness of the foot at the bottom of my vessel. So maybe if you want to draw that in before you carry on too far, it's a good idea. I also tend to make the diameter of this different to the diameter of the top. Whether it's larger or smaller, that's entirely up to you. I go for a little bit smaller than the diameter of the rim. I will leave that to the turner's decision. So a little bit more come away from that. Wind the speed up a little bit. Before we go too much further, we check this little ridge here because it's very vulnerable to getting broken. Little chips can come off around that junction where you rolled in with the skew, but a sharp tool should see it okay. Now I'm going to go from the bowl gouge to my spindle gouge. Sigh of relief, I know, because this is going to be my gentle, smaller kind of tweaking the design tool. So I'm going to rub the bevel safely in the back of that cone. With a nice polished finish off it. Don't be too much of a hero with the thickness first of all, but it should be delicate. And of course, it should be definitely flowing downwards in scale from the design of that lip where it meets the form. Protecting yourself with the bevel again as you enter these cuts. Protecting yourself meaning I'm entering with the bevel rather than just the cutting edge. So I can bring the cut on by bringing the handle around, picking up that form. You'll see those lovely long shavings that are coming off there. Yes, you can get all caught up with putting funny little designs in the middle of your stems, and that's all part of the fun and journey. But let's just keep it simple for the moment. Lying the tool over on its side is going to invite a run back, always away from the edge. So if I'm going to do that, unless you really have command of it with a fist, put a thumb in the way so it blocks the path, and then just lean in, cutting just below the center. You may have noticed a tiny little, it wanted to walk then. I sometimes throw a little step design in. You'll find that by removing wood, you'll end up with designs appearing in front of your eyes, and up to you where you go with those. Now, here, the bevel is pretty high. I've pushed the tool forward, so I'm just literally on the top edge of the tool, but it's not a scrape. A scrape would be here. I'm rubbing the bevel so that I get a nice junction between the two. And if you chase this little lump here, just hit it with abrasives. You'll be in good shape. Right, let's make a denomination where we're going to have the foot come away. Good thing here is to part the fibers with a skew before you go in with the parting tool. So we're going to do that just there by lifting in with the skew. Let's take a number 2 angle on that one just quickly if we can, Todd. Camera 2, just, I know you're doing 18 things at once, doing a great job. Okay, so you can't see the angle, but what's going to happen with the tip of the tool is I'm just going to lift it in. I'm not pushing, I'm literally just lifting as I do that, okay? So back above again. Great. Lift in. Done. Just cutting those fibers. Now I'm going to take a spindle gouge, parting tool. I'm going to do the same cut, motion that in, behind. So I've now got the design put out, but I want to reduce this foot just down a little bit. So I'm going to do that with a little bit of a shear so I don't burst that. And you'll see that it's grown a little bit in its diameter. So I'm going to come back behind it, put another severance cut with the spindle gouge. Just there. That's looking good. Gently trying to keep that nice and smooth. Of course, we can hit that with an abrasive. That's not a problem. But if you're sensible enough and careful enough, your best friend, the gouge, should do it. All right, we'll sand that. We'll get to a bit of color and decorating. Slow the speed down, remove the tool rest. Quickly going through the grits. If I can find where Mr. 180 went, there he is. Again, underneath is a good place to sand. Don't press too hard at this point. And if you've used branch wood, do be careful. If you see some branch wood has a very soft component in the middle. So watch out for that as you turn down the stem, because that is a weak spot for sure, and it can break off just as you thought you've created your masterpiece. You pressed a little too hard while you were sanding and snap it off. Okay. So we'll just clear that off with some air. Good to do that before you apply any finish anyway, regardless of your chosen finish. I'm not going to put a polish on this one. I'm going to actually throw a few little stencils or stickers. You can cut out anything out of a piece of tape that you have regarding your designs. These are some of my own stencils made by Chromacraft, but really you could cut out whatever shape you like out of low tack tape and stick on here. I prepared this so they're a little easier to peel off. I'm going to put 5 on. 5 is a good number. We'll have 1 on the stem down here on the foot. And I think we'll have 1 just creeping over the rim of this vessel. If I can get my fingernail on it. There we go. Let's have him just wrapping around there just a little bit. The nice thing about that material is that it's now sticking on the reverse side as well. I'm going to use a wood dye for this through an airbrush. You can use a paintbrush or whatever else you think is going to be a fun idea. Just let me grab my airbrush from behind. We're going to go, I think we're going to go autumn colors as I've got leaves on there. And of course, I could have colored the vase first before I put the leaves on. They're going to be wood colored underneath. This is pre-mixed, it's straight out the bottle. And this is a resonated wood dye. And again, this is a Chromacraft one. And I believe there may be some of those in your goodie bag at the end. We'll see, not the goodie bag, in the tool giveaway. So let's get a little bit in there. I'm going to go into the darker areas and cloud a bit of this on. Just for that area there. As I draw backwards, you'll see I don't end up with such a sort of a line on the surface that's maybe not so nice to look at. I'm using a quick release system here for the airbrush. Sorry, I'm trying to find the appropriate place. Let's go to camera 2 again so we can see how these plug in. Gotta be careful of where your hose is coming from. Make sure it can't get caught up with anything. But this is a quick release coupling on the end of the hose, and it comes complete with a tail here. And you just pop that one on for an easy life, and then it pinches on and off. So we're going to go rotating again. Make sure that's all pinched down. Get the yellow on. Speed-wise, 500 or 600 RPMs, normally fine for this. You don't need to go super crazy unless you want to line up your nice robust shirt. And I don't think I'll be popular for that one because the wood dye doesn't tend to wash off. And then we need to consider a darker stain to frame everything also. So particularly where the leaves are, I'm going to aim at those leaves. I'm just going to spray literally a cloud over each leaf, making sure I get the details right. And again, this is just resonated wood dye, which Chromacraft make. Chromacraft's an American company. This is really low grain raising dye, if that's wants to be a question you might ask. And again, we're going to throw a little bit of that in there. A little bit of darkness in the bottom of there, and perhaps a little bit around the foot. It can also be nice to perhaps dance the colors around a little bit. Even though I graduated it out, there's a little bit of a stripe there. So I'm just going to drop some of this color down in there a little bit. So we have some graduation or a little bit of variation in the color. Now remember, if this was really pretty wood, I certainly wouldn't be doing any of this. The ones that paid my rent for a decade, absolutely hand on heart, that's how it worked, were more often than not pretty wood. And I varied the height of the stems and gave myself a challenge that way to see that I could keep that growing, if you like. These come off pretty easily. Up to you with your choice of finish. It can be done with a lacquer. It's up to you, your choice. Now these are reusable. You can stick this back onto your paper backing, and I will get 6 or 7 goes out of those because they cost money, of course. Now, if you've cut your own shapes out of little bits of tape, then I guess you're going to be throwing them on the deck. Dries almost instantly, but make sure, unlike my fingers, you've got clean hands when you do this so you don't contaminate your surface with dirty fingers. That one done. We should have another one down here. There it is. So a little bit of Mother Nature and reminding people that we are looking at a wooden object, of course. So pretty autumnal as we come around the story. And if we go to the top, you can see on camera 2 what the top end looks like. So just a little invitation of what might be coming down below. That color scheme is entirely up to you. So how do we get this piece off? We go back to camera 1 again. What I'm going to do, I've got about 10 minutes left on my time, so it should be okay. I'm going to take this, having finished it, lacquered it, polished it, whatever I'm going to do, pyrograph some veins in here, texture this little area on each leaf, perhaps with a Dremel or something that gives it another level, is be able to remove it from the chuck. And it won't ever go back dead straight. I don't care what anybody says. It never goes in easy twice. So that's going to be removed. Rather than part it off and have torn grain on this end of the vase, we're going to be brave. We're going to turn it round. And it does require a little bit of, we're going to be brave about this. So I'm going to put this pre-turned from my class. It's still got a bit of green airbrush paint on it, look. Shape may need to be trued up because it's been taken out of the chuck once already. So we'll do that. Just put this one safely out of the way. We're going to true this up. Just, even though it looks okay, no, it doesn't. We're going to true that one up so that we know it meets inside just nicely. A little bit of a shear. Take that down. Now, of course, you could have more than one way to skin a cat. This is my way today of skinning my cat. But a long piece that went down inside the vessel and pressed on the base interior of the vessel against the foot would be stronger. And this way, not only does it invite the potential of causing a little scuff line where my finish is, but if I push too hard again, it's going to want to split that vessel. So I'm actually holding on just down there. I'm going to make that a little bit more pointy. Just reduce it a little bit. Left my chuck key on the top again, making that vibration. Do that. Okay, so we're going to bring this back between centers, and we should have, I'll zoom out. I keep thinking you can do it all from there, Rod. I apologize. I'm now going to be taking the cone off, and the footprint, of course, that was left in when we started is in the bottom of the piece. It's as good as we're going to get. Bring this one up between centers. And when it's almost there and holding, I will back it off a little bit so I can actually feel it. You might have heard it. It just snapped into place. And gently now, I'm doing the hand wheel up just out of shot. You want to go to the camera 2. So I mean gently. I'm gently doing it up. I'm not cranking it up because, of course, I'm going to split the piece. As far as you dare, and then stop. Lock it up, although this is more for stabilizing than locking it, but it might give you confidence in the whole deal. Now we're going to go back to an overhead camera, and we're going to reduce this down little by little. And we could switch between the two there, Todd. Thanks for jumping up there. You are omnipresent today, my friend, doing a grand job. Perhaps not lay into it with a big fat gouge. If you're going to, make sure it's sharp. So I jump between the two. Here is my one I used previously. But I have a pre-sharpened gouge here, which I'm going to go for first. Again, your paper towel could be defending the finish on the inside of that if you have it, or the cones that you may have turned to on your threaded safety drive. So don't forget you can do that. You can make things to fit over that safety drive yourself. You've got to sneak up on this one. And I mean that because two things. One, it's going to cause it to spin this end. Two, we don't want to bust it off. It's only just held on. I've got quite a lot of material. This does put your nerves on edge a little. And you're going to get some failures. Things will make you jump. And things will break. There could have been a split here that you didn't see in the wood. When you have this piece here to reduce, it can certainly blister and break on you. Let me see if I can zoom this in just a little bit away from my feet. There we go. This bit can blister, so be careful as you approach that. Take it down. And you want to be careful of the threads on your nice life center. So just take it down to about pinky finger thickness. 8 cuts at a time is way plenty. Sneaking up until you get near to the underneath of your vessel. And the reason we're coming at it from this end is to undercut it. So let's have a camera 2 shot of this peeling down, if we may. Beautiful. So you won't see the tool, but you'll see the wood reduce. So you can see the wood reducing down in there a little at a time. We'll do another one. Just as we go down. Now I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to put my thumb on the tool rest and block the path so it can't scoot back on me. Yep, camera 1 or whichever one's above. So I'm blocking it with my thumb, covered in dye, there it is, and very carefully, just on that edge, pick up the cut, and I'm going to undercut it. Now, if you want to get all decorative, back to camera 2, just for this quick appearing line, then we can certainly place a design on there, just for rolling this all over. And that is now an undercut. So when I take this cut further, it remains as a little signature. Some people like it to use as a frame to write the name up against, but it also means you've shown the mark of a craftsman because you've turned underneath your piece. 1 or 2 lines, your beading tools, whatever you want to use. Now I'm going to go to my spindle gouge and get this down as close as I dare. We'll go back to the above camera. Make sure you attended to any sharp edges. This edge could be left sharp from when you cut it off before. Don't forget, you might just want to hit that with a bit of material. Down you go, a little at a time. I have to say, I'm quite enjoying this. It's been some years since I've made these. I pay my rent in other ways, but it really is good practice. And I felt a little challenged and a little rusty with my tooling. And that's quite nice. It's quite rewarding. You'll probably find that if you do a couple of these, even just for exercises, giveaways, gifts, if you're not selling them, your tooling will have improved so much more. Let's just give a quick reminder that this needs sanding on the bottom here. And now we're going to take this down to our almost off and catch point. So we're going to take this little pip down here. You can't quite see it with camera 2. We can't have everything. It's just the one little invisible bit. We'll see if we can't get the top camera, the facing camera here, right into this position in front of me. So Brent, you might be able to move this camera and fire it right at this corner, because they certainly don't need to see my ugly face. If we can just get in on the back of this while I take this off and catch it, we'll go between camera 1 and camera 3, and we'll see exactly how we're reducing this. Perfect, beautiful job. So I'm on about a pencil thickness or a similar thickness to the stem of the vase right now. Happily finish this. This is all sanded and lovely in real time. So we're going to now sneak up on this. Maybe slow your speed down to a little bit more comfortable. We'll stay on that camera 3 for the moment if we can. And using the bevel as protection, lift the handle up and start to come down the back of this piece. Little by little, listen for chatter. And this is entirely up to you. No point in being a hero and having it on the floor in pieces. It's up to you. You can zoom a little bit more on that if you want, Brent. Because we're basically going to get this down to almost the point of a pencil. If you're using branch wood, don't trust it so thin. I would stop at about 1/8 if you're going to be using branch wood, because there will be a pith or a weak spot in the middle. So that's probably where I would stop for branch wood material. We're going to sever this off with the skew. So the skew is just going to approach right at the back here, being very careful of the long edge that it doesn't catch. And we start to just sever those fibers, because a plug can be pulled right out at the end of this. So now we go to overhead, and I'm going to catch the piece. So I'm going to hold the vase gently in my hand so it's not going anywhere. Oh, another thing that can be useful, again, I mentioned the movability of the switch here. And this is so useful to be able to plant where I want it. I can even hit that with my knee if I need to. So one hand is going to be on the vase, the skew coming in with my right hand, gently sever that. There goes the vase. It's now safely in my hands. I can stop the lathe very easily. I can move the tailstock out of the way. And there is going to be our completed job. Let's sit it up on the lathe and see if we can't go back with that camera and have a look at its form. If I put it on the headstock here, that will be great. So I'll give you my finger to have a look at, and you won't quite be able to see all of it with the lip of the lathe. But if we now go to camera number 3, there is our little project. And that absolutely paid my rent for 10 years. And if you can imagine it with a pretty piece of wood rather than a painted piece of wood, wonderful. But pretty pieces of wood tend to cost more money. Go foraging, careful what you're drawing, stay safe. Hope you enjoyed that bit. Later on, I'll be back. We'll be doing a bowl, and we're going to do a, you can zoom me out, and I'll even say hello personally. Later on, we're going to be doing a bowl, and I'm going to do a couple of different textured surfaces on the actual face of the bowl and on a rim. Really happy to be here, Brent. One exciting day, and it's not even raining, so it's a good start. So I will catch you all a little while later.
We got a couple of
questions. Oh, okay. I'll freeze and wait for the questions.
Am I on?
Far away. I forgot about that bit. Let me get a mouthful of water.
With the lathe in reverse too.
That's a very good question. Sanding in reverse.
Oh, there we go.
Is a very good question.
Sanding
Absolutely sanding in reverse, but really only if I'm protected with the piece between centers. There are chucks which have, as this particular one does, the value of a grub screw to fit onto them, making sure your shaft is exposed behind the threads. So you're enabled to do that, and then don't forget you did it and go to take your chuck off when it's all super tight and cut yourself a new thread. But absolutely sanding in reverse can certainly be a bonus. Just make sure you are guarded against that coming loose, and probably that you've turned against it in some force so that when you do come to sand, you haven't just put it on by hand and then sand in reverse and invite the chuck to come off. So between centers, no brainer. Very good question. Any others?
Dry or wet wood?
Oh, this one, that's a good question. Let me put a thinking hat on, because that one's crushing my brain. Does it work that way? No, it's better this way. Dry or wet wood? Dry wood primarily for everything. Certainly practice with wet wood. And I did have some strange results early on. When I started to progress the length of the stem, then I would do them out of what I thought was dry. And I'd come, after a week, they started to droop a little bit. So that can be fun. But you know what? If you did it out of madrone, something that we know that moves crazy, you wet turned it, as long as it didn't split, you can boil it, by the way, a couple of hours on a boiling boil, then put it to dry, making sure the piece is submerged the whole time you're boiling, and maybe get permission from the family first before you turn your home into a sauna, do it outside. Then when that piece is dried, as long as you can true up the base back between the centers, you're good. So you can have a crinkly vase that's also very appealing to some customers. But on the whole, dry wood.
How big was that piece that you started with for that?
I did mention, but I was speaking fast. I like to go 7 by 3. That loses me about a ½ inch with truing the piece up and 3/8 from my tenon. That actual piece was a 6.5 by 3.
Now, how do you not get paint all over the lathe?
How do you not get paint all over the lathe? Another good question, because it's Brent's lathe and it's rather new and shiny. But actually, because I'm using an airbrush, it's almost dry immediately on contact. Unless I really go heavy with it in one place, as I pointed out, I'd have some stripes up my shirt by now. That would have been the case. So an airbrush not only gives me painting advantages, I don't worry so much about the mess. I've been to some clubs and they go to all the trouble of covering the lathe in paper, and it's okay. Now, what's not okay is if I spill it while I'm pouring it, but as far as painting it, that's not a problem. If you wish to paint this under a low speed, another advantage of the robust American Beauties, and I guess all your lathes, Brent, is the ability to run them at a low RPM without them choking, as other lathes might. And that you can use a brush held downhill and do it just that. And also, I don't know if I have them here. If you're not into paint brushes or airbrushing, then of course you can use a dye pen and do exactly the same thing. So that's reverse, Nick. Here is a dye pen. I can certainly decorate areas of my vessel with different colored pens. Might have been, I thought we were on that camera, sorry, to be able to show that. And regardless of what I'm doing, yes, you should wear your visor when any piece of wood is spinning, but I'm literally just putting the pen on. So there are various ways of doing it. It's a good question, but I tend to not get covered in what I'm putting on.
Oh, last question for you on this, Nick, is somebody wants to know, what's a vase like that worth?
Well, that's entirely up to your place that you sell it, or whether you're selling it from yourself. So, you know, if you want inside info, this is now 30 years ago. So for 10 years, and the price didn't increase too much, I charged an off the lathe price 30 years ago between 10 and 20 pounds. So 15 to 30, 35 bucks. That's still potentially, unfortunately, true today. But if you upscale them to prettier pieces of wood, or you put gold, silver, bronze, as in small, medium, larger, then I found anything up to 90 bucks worked well. Really did. That was it. When you started going over 100, people are a little bit more looking for something bigger or a different reward. If you want these to sell fast and pay well, it's a really nice gift for somebody. Now, if you're spending time decorating it, then perhaps you should elevate the price a bit more rather than just the wood doing the talking. But look at that. If this is a piece of exotic timber, you might have paid half that already for the wood. So don't undersell yourself when you've done a good job. So it depends on you to decide where your market is. And heck, I throw them up in there in the end into the hundreds. I put them on a collector's shelf, and then they would sell because they were extra special pieces of wood. Or maybe I'd spend a bit more time and got this thinner, you know, Dick Sing's amazing hollow ornaments that he does. They're eggshell thin. Well, hell no, you're not getting that for 25 bucks. So it's what you put into it, and be honest with yourself. You know, if you've spent all the money on your equipment to get a reward from it. Excellent question. Hope that answer was acceptable. I think that concludes us for the moment, doesn't it? And over to you, my friend.
You've answered all the questions, Nick. That was really great. And
pleasure.
I'm amazed that you could do all that.
I'm amazed in an hour. So I amaze myself sometimes.
Well, you know, and
like I think walk and wake up.
We understand that you took shortcuts on the sanding and stuff, but even to do that complex of a form, you know, in that amount of time and do the decoration, that's pretty neat, pretty nice.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to have a challenge once in a while.
There you go. We're going to challenge you again in a little bit. Look forward to it. We're going to go back and we're going to give away some more door prizes for everybody. And we've got another nice slate of door prizes I think you'll enjoy. Bear with me. I'm just going to move the camera. And I know that there were some concerns about the audio, and I apologize for that. It's hard when you are turning and wearing a mask to get the best audio. And Nick did slow down and try to speak a little bit louder for us. And I think I saw some comments there that was helping. Okay, so we're up to prize number 8. And this is from Don Geiger, Geiger Solutions. Don's down in Florida. And Don was our very first robust dealer. And I met Don at the 2005 AAW symposium that was in Kansas. And it was the first symposium that I went to. I had taken 2 lathes, and I had the good fortune of being next door to Don, or my booth was right next to Don's. And you may have heard the phrase, we're all just one tool away from greatness. And that's the first place that I heard it was from Don. He said that woodturners are all just one tool away from greatness. And we thank you for that. We thank you for that very much. So this is Geiger's True and Dress. This is a wonderful system for dressing normal abrasive wheels, not CBN wheels or diamond wheels. But this has a really high quality diamond on the top. And I'm going to dig it out here. Excuse me about clicking the camera. And it's got a guide on the back for guiding it along your rest. And a real high quality, I think it's a 1/2 carat diamond on the top. And Todd just ran off all of a sudden for the names. So let me see. I think he's got the names grabbed in advance. You want to hand me that yellow sheet there, Nick, please? Thank you. Okay, so this is number 8. Goes to John McCaskill. And so John McCaskill sent us an email, and this very nice wheel dresser from Geiger Solutions, Don Geiger, will be yours. Number 9, one of our dealers, Sam Angelo. You may know him as the Wyoming Woodturner. And Sam does great YouTube videos. I think he's got something like 500 YouTube videos on wood turning. And they're all geared towards the beginner and intermediate turner. And Sam has this great personality and does a great job with his videos. And so we've got a 4-piece set here, 2 bowls. One looks like honey locust, the other elm, rosewood egg, a nice 2-piece box. This looks like an ebony top, and he's done some dyeing on this other piece. And this is going to go to Jason Edwards. Jason Edwards gets number 9, collection of Sam's turnings. Thank you, Sam, for supplying those. And check out Sam's YouTube station. It's Wyoming Woodturner. He lives in Billings, Montana right now, but when he did this, he was in Wyoming when he started. So he stuck with that name, Wyoming Woodturner. So door prize number 10 is a handle and set of hollowing tools from John Jordan Woodturning. If you've been in woodturning very long, you know that John Jordan probably needs no interruption. And so it's a nice foam grip handle. It's got a nice solid foam grip with all the way to the end. Set screws that hold in, and a bent hollowing tool and a straight hollowing tool. So the owner of that is going to be Larry Steinmetz. Larry Steinmetz. Todd, if you want to just help carry those away, that would be great. Okay, number 11 is another robust tool rest, and we're going to be giving several of these away today. Your choice: comfort, low profile, mini, smaller, large J, interior and exterior, or a box rest. Specify what you want. Let us know the make and model of your lathe, so we make sure we get you the right post size, and we'll get you set up on that. I'm going to be talking about tool rest for just a few minutes when we're done with this. So if you won this prize and you can't make up your mind, I'll give you a little extra info. Did I give a name on that? 11, right? Gail Brooks. Sorry, Gail Brooks. That's a tool rest for you to get. Okay, number 12 is a turner's edge, 1/2-inch bowl gouge with 16-inch maple handle. And these all have a parabolic flute. I'm going to talk about them a little bit. And this is our turner's edge brand of tools by Robust Tools. And that's number 12, and that goes to Mark Caron. Mark Caron, C-A-R-O-N. Prize number 13, another sharpening tool from Geiger Solutions, Don Geiger, who I mentioned. And this is a thing to jazz up your Wolverine turning system. And it's one of them things that really needs to be demonstrated to explain. So I'm going to have to ask you for a pass on doing that because I don't have a Wolverine out here to show you this on. But this is an outfit that Don has come up with that really helps you increase your repeatability and the versatility of the Wolverine jig. So it's this jig, and then we've thrown in a robust hat too. So this is number 13, and this goes to Shannon, I'm going to mispronounce this, Weiland, Shannon Weiland, W-E-I-L-A-N-D-T. And last in this group is another robust tool rest. So number 14, and that goes to Dexter Tucker. Dexter Tucker. You can email us and get out the tool rest of your choice. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about tool rests. And what I think I'd like to do is have you swing the camera over at the Scout, and we'll be out of Nick's way. And I'm going to go over some of the tool rests and what the different features are and why you might want one rather than the other. So, Todd, if you can do that. I'm going to go right to here. So you can kind of take camera 3 and no, we're good here. We're good here. Thank you. Okay, and then so right in here, and you can kind of zoom in here. I'm going to be working in this area. They don't need to see my handsome face. Yeah, right over there. Nick is asking where the sandwiches are. We got to keep him fed. We got to keep Nick fed. Okay, so tool rests. We make a lot of tool rests. They all have a hardened rod on the top. And that's one of the features that people really like. And so they're very, very hard to get a nick in and very hard to ding. And you don't have to file them. And as Nick mentioned, we have 44 different varieties, and that includes all the different post lengths and everything. And then we do customs as well. So if you have a older Powermatic with an 1 1/8" post, you know, we can do that for you. You got to call it in. We don't stock them. No charge, no extra charge for inch-sized new tool rests. We do charge extra for the metric size. We do 25 millimeter and 30 millimeter. And the reason we do that is because the 30 millimeter and 25 millimeter stock is crazy expensive in the United States, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but it does. So a comfort rest, we call this a comfort rest because you can lay your hand in here very nicely, very comfortably. You got room for a couple of fingers down there to guide your cut. And we make these from 4-inch wide up to 15-inch wide. This happens to be a 12-inch that I've got in here right now. The other straight rest that we make is the low profile rest. And the low profile is nice for people who like to get their hand around the rest. So let me demonstrate for you. I might be running my finger. You can see I've got my middle finger underneath the rest, or I might be going like this and just using, I'm supporting the bottom of the rest with my index finger, and I've got my thumb on the top of the rest. Now it's really interesting. People say, well, which one's better? And generally speaking, just generally speaking, spindle turners tend to like this low profile rest, and bolt turners like to like the comfort rest. Two really well-known turners, David Ellsworth and Richard Graffin. Richard loves these tool rests, these low-profile tool rests. And I've sent him a bunch down to Australia. You know, he's originally from the UK, lives in Australia now. And I've sent all kinds of these low-profile rests to Richard. He just loves them, eats them up. David Ellsworth, bless his heart, hates these things. David likes the comfort rest because David's turning style is to have more of his hand underneath the rest, like this. So this style works great for David. The other style works great for Richard. And so there's no wrong answer. It's just what is more comfortable for you. Anyway, you can't argue with those two guys. So our J rest, big J rest was probably a big. We have a two-size J rest, big one and a small one. This is 14 inches. By 14 inches, I mean if you took a tape measure and measured from end to end, it's 14 inches long. I don't know if you hear it in the background. We got a motorcycle gang going by on the street. You might hear a little rumbling, but that'll go away. So 14 inches, the J rests are really nice for getting into deep forms. So if you're turning a vase, you can go down the side of the vase and make the hook across the bottom. And you can also turn it around and just use it as a straight rest. And you can use it in an open bowl form too. But if I could only have one tool rest, it would probably be the J rest. And luckily, you're not stuck with just one tool rest. You can have more than one. Sometimes we get a comment on this. And Todd, if you can zoom in on this a little bit, you can see here on the end, the hardened rod is actually offset a little bit from the base metal. And people say, well, how come that isn't centered up? You know, because on the tail end, it's centered up, but over here it's offset. Well, it's offset so that you can get just a little bit deeper into your bowl. You can have just a little bit more tool support, a little bit deeper into the bowl. So that's why that's offset like that. That's by design. So we make that in two sizes, 14-inch and a J and a 9-inch. And the 9-inch is only going to fit in some of your smaller lathes. Like if you have a mini lathe or something like this rest is too tall to go in, but this smaller one works just great. And they're both very, very versatile and very popular. First person I saw with a J rest was Dale Nish. Dale Nish was the first person I saw using a J rest, and this was just a round bar. The other really popular style we have is the interior and exterior curved. So the exterior has got the post in the middle, and it's good for working around the outside of say a salad bowl size shape. This is about an 8-inch radius. Both of these have about an 8-inch radius. And I want to point out a special feature on the interior curve. If you look at the interior curve, just where it is in the camera right there, you see that this support underneath the hardened rod is at an angle. It's angled down. And the reason why is when you've got this on the inside of the bowl, this is out of the way. Because if this was straight, if this was straight down, the bottom of the rest would hit the edge of the bowl before you got the top of your tool rest up close. So people ask me, well, if I can only get one, the interior or exterior, which one is the one I should get? Well, I would go with the interior because you've got this advantage. You can use it on the outside of the bowl, but you'll notice here too, like on the J rest, I think the camera is good right there, Todd. The hardened rod is offset from the body. So the hardened rod is offset to the outside of the radius, which puts it closest to the inside of your bowl. Hope that makes sense. And on the exterior curved rest, you can go a shorter distance. You can go a shorter distance into the bowl. But if you see how this one's offset, you're actually going to start hitting the edge of your rest before your top, gets inside. So this top rod is offset to the inside of the radius so that it can get you up close to the outside of your bowl, give you maximum tool support. So all of our tool rests are warranted for life, and you break them or bend them, we'll either repair them or replace them. And we've had these in the field now for 14, 15 years, and we get very, very few of them back, I'm proud to say. Okay, moving on from our tool rest, we've talked a little bit about our gouges, and we just the last. I think it was just this week, right? We just started putting handles on them, right, Todd? So this week we've just started having these with handles. So we've been doing the Turner's Edge gouges for a couple of years now, and we have 5 sizes: a 5/8" bowl gouge, which this is, a 1/2" bowl gouge and spindle gouge, and a 3/8" bowl gouge and spindle gouge. And so we contracted with a company in Pennsylvania to make these handles for us. These are all nice, solid, clear, straight grain maple. And we get them in, we laser engrave them with the Turner's Edge logo, and put 2 coats of finish on them, a stainless steel ferrule. And these are available handled and unhandled. So if you want to zoom in there, Todd, I think I can get you having a good look at the Parabolic Flute. And we chose a Parabolic Flute for a number of reasons. One is the sharpenability, getting these edges nice when you do a swept back grind, really makes the edge a lot more friendly. Parabolic Flute also removes enough material that the flute clears. When you're turning, the flute does not clog up with chips, but also does not remove so much material to weaken the gouge. So if you have a big U-shaped flute in here, you've actually removed a lot of metal and you weaken the gouge, and sometimes you can get some vibration. And the parabolic flute is really the best of both worlds with that. So you've got actually the best of three worlds. You've got an excellent edge profile that you can do with the swept back. You've got good chip ejection, and you retained enough material in your tool to keep it nice and solid. The other thing that we do is we put a flat all the way back on the tool. So a lot of times, you know, if you put this in a Wolverine or some other jig, you get back about to here, and you can't put your jig back any further because the radius of the tool starts to come up. So we've got a flat mill the full length of the tool. I mean, all the way back into the handle. And turners really like the fact that, you know, you're spending a lot of money for these gouges, and it's nice to be able to, you know, use them down to a nubbin. Lastly, the thing I want to talk to you about is our surface finish. Now, in our video of the shop tour, you saw some CNC machines turning. You saw the mill being used, and you saw the lathe being used. All of those tools that are in our machine tools, whether they're carbide or whether they're high-speed steel, have a nitriding treatment on them. And the nitriding treatment significantly increases the surface hardness and edge holding of the tool. And the Rockwell scale doesn't go up this far, but if you extrapolated the Rockwell scale, the actual cutting edge on these are about 75 Rockwell. And it's about 1/1000th of an inch deep. So we're not going to see this on the screen, but right in the flute, and actually the whole outside of the tool, and you'll see it on our scrapers too, is the nitriding treatment. And it's not a plating, it's not a coating, it's the actual chemical change of the molecules on the steel. It's done in a gaseous environment where molecules are transferred right into the surface. So like I said, all the tools that we use in our CNC equipment for cutting metal have a nitriding treatment on them. And there's a lot of different nitriding treatments. And we worked with a couple of different vendors to find a good blend of cost effectiveness and edge holding. And so we're using a nitriding treatment that's went through a number of tests here. We've sent this out to a number of different professional woodturners and trusted amateur woodturners. And we really had them hammer them on them hard. And we got really, really good feedback on it. So want to make a point to tell you about these. Questions on all that? Want to check to see, Todd, if we've got any questions on our tool rests or on our gouges. We also make a collet handle system. We can get that out if we have a minute or two, and I can show you that.
So go back to the tool rests. Are the tool rests from my Sweet 16 interchangeable with the Scout I bought from my side?
Okay, so the Scout and the Sweet 16 take the same tool rest, and the answer is yes. If they'll fit on the Sweet 16, they'll also fit on the Scout. And the reason that question is asked is the bigger the diameter of the lathe is, the longer the post needs to be. And the Scout is a 14-inch lathe, and the Sweet 16 is a 16-inch lathe. But I designed it so that those tool rests would be interchangeable. We're going to go over the Scout and the Sweet 16 a little bit later after next demo. No other questions out there. Okay, just a reminder, you want to order any accessories this weekend, enter free ship to get free shipping on your tool rests or gouges or any of our tool handles, our live centers, etc. So free shipping, that's good through Sunday at midnight. If you're interested in a lathe, it's $400 off on an American Beauty, $300 on a Sweet 16, and $200 on a Scout. And if you have questions about your lathe, you want to talk to somebody before you actually finalize the order, my friendly recommendation is submit an order for the base machine without payment, and then we'll clean up the details with you next week when we're back in the office, normal business hours, and happy to spend more time with you one-on-one. Also, there's an additional 3% discount if you pay with a check rather than a credit card. And a lot of people don't understand that every time you pay with a credit card, the credit card company gets part of that purchase. And depending on the card you're using with us, you know, if you get these cashback cards or cards with a lot of rewards, it varies from about 1.5% to 4.5%. So we just round that to 3%. So, and that's added into our cost model. That's a cost of doing business, just like, you know, buying a part or having our powder coating done or what have you. We've got to add that into our cost model. So if you pay us with a check, we can take that out of the cost model and you have the benefit. So without further ado, I think those are the points that I wanted to cover with you. And we'll go back to Mr. Nick, if he's ready. Looks like he's just about there.
Mic test, mic test. Mic test, mic test.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if you put them on camera one now for a minute, Todd, then you can get the other camera in the situation you like. I'll adjust this one. So again, we're on a piece of maple. This is soft maple, super easy to turn, a little bit fluffy. There is a screw chuck in the back of this guy, held in my C-Jaws on the Axminster SK114. And I'm between centers ready so I don't upset anything on the screw. It's the only piece I got, so I hope it works. And I don't see any damage in it. So we'll crack into it. I'm going to do a very simple bowl shape so we can soon get around to the top, which is the proposition for doing something for us within the hour time spectrum. But I'll go through the tooling on the outside of the bowl as I normally would. This is around about an 8-inch by 3-inch diameter piece of dry wood. So I'll change hats, get my bowl gouge out. I do like to turn at some speed. The lathe may not like me putting the pressure on it while I'm on the high-speed belt. And if that's the case, then I'll adjust it differently. But I like to get the job done. And after all, that's what we pay for the power for. When you can put a thundering great big lump on and chip away at it for hours, listening to your favorite opera, what more do you want in life? Alrighty. So bring this up to a speed that you are comfortable with. It's you who's turning it. If we go to the overhead camera and stay on that one for a minute, I've got the tool set up across the corner here. Again, pretty much so the cutting edge is on the center line of rotation. And I'm going to have the tool presented over at 10 o'clock so that you can see that the flute is going to be pointing in the direction of the cut. I'm going to use an overhand grip with my thumb not on the shaft of the tool. It's going to be overhand so I can squeeze. Let's just try a couple of angles for the sake of it. Let's go to 3 just to see, sorry, 2 to see what we got. Okay, so we need to bring that one out. Excuse us, guys and girls. There's just the 3 of us getting this done. So you'll be able to also see a little bit of what's going on from the perspective of this cut as well as the overhead. We don't have 27 cameramen. We're doing the best we can for you. So I'm going to pick up this cut with that draw cut. And Todd, feel free just to switch between the two. And if you think we need to zoom on something, then we will do, okay? So using about 1/2 to 1/3 of the available edge, I'm going to squeeze through. Now I've moved my microphone. Do let us know, viewers, if you can't hear me at all. Very easy cut, just squeezing my fist. I'm not physically pulling along, I'm closing my wrist. That gives me all that action to pull through the wood. We are going to see some torn grain in this area. Let's zoom in a little bit. I'm not concerned about that. The next cut is going to be along the journey along the tool rest. So I'm going to do an underhand grip now. I was previously over. And I'm going to trude the piece up, stopping just before I get to the top so I don't break off any wood I might want to keep because it's not running true on that surface either. So here we go. Underhand grip, the flute's an exact And some of you may be asking, why didn't I just do that to begin with? Well, you're going to encounter burls or piece of wood you've chainsawed out where this is not already a nice round disc. So that squeeze cut to get the corner off, and it's going to be a bowl anyway, just makes complete sense. If the piece is pretty well round, then of course you can take a cut from one side and stop just before you get to this edge. Back in that other direction now. And there is still a blurred form on the top. You can just see it in the corner here where my finger's wiggling. What I'm going to do now is lie the tool in and present it almost completely closed, just the tip of the tool and true that top edge up. So when I'm looking at my shape, it's not distracted by this uneven part. Moving the tool rest in as close as you can is the way to go. Oh, got a bit of figuring in it. Look at that. So now we're going to walk around to this end, and we're going to put a tenon on. Again, until I've removed the tailstock, you won't be able to see everything, but feel free to go back and forth to what I'm doing here. My draw cut is certainly the one to do this with. It's a very easy cut from the middle to the outside, just to clean this surface up before I go to mark my tenon. Couple of goes. Of course, if you wish, you can go back across with your facing off cut, if you wish to. There's very little resistance, but the draw cut is such an easy cut to engage to clean up an uneven surface. So we're now going to take my tailstock out of the way a little bit and just mark where the tenon is going to be. Now I want to keep a register here if ever possible. That's it, we'll stay on 2 for a minute, and I'm actually going to step back in there and zoom that one if I can get the right direction. Sorry guys, falling off your couches now. If we want to put this back between centers on cold jaws or something, for example, at the end, we need to have a register. If it sticks out too far, cut it off, bring your tailstock back in, replace the footprint, and keep that register in place. So I'm actually going to cut mine off and do that because it's a little proud. So what happens is I lose that little hole that I want to keep in the middle. So back in it goes, put in my little footprint, and now I know where I'm going. It also gives me a center point to focus on when I'm marking my center. So there is the center, and I'm going to use my dividers. In this instance, of course, you can just use a straight edge, a ruler to mark with, and I have one of these speed size, which for the particular jaws I'm using, I just need to put my dividers in. Pretty useful bit of kit, actually, especially with tired eyes these days. I'm feeling it. Watching rotating pieces of wood for 33 years has certainly brought on the necessity for more repeat prescriptions of lenses on my nose, for sure. So this is now half the diameter requested of the entire tenon that's going to grip it. And for me, this is a safer way of doing it by engaging my dividers into that hole and slowly bringing that round so the force is being put onto the wooden surface and the tool rest in a safe fashion. Do it how you would like to do it. That's sort of what I always say it, as long as it's safe. So pop up that hole, grab my diameter, and I'm safe. Some people like to ghost it, whatever works for you. That's the safer way as far as I'm concerned. Now I'm going to bring the tailstock back up, and I know where the diameter of the tenon is, so I can some of that wood off. Instead of going straight to a push cut with a bevel wrapping cut, I find that this is the quickest way to remove wood. And we're going to look at those 3 cuts. So 1, 2, 3. The first cut is the pull cut with an overhand grip, and the edge is facing the wood. It's quite mean on the surface, and it will leave a torn grain. Then when I've removed what I need to start presenting the gouge in a push cut, we will look at that in a moment after we've done the tenon. So here we go. Overhand grip. Get the speed where you're comfortable. Squeeze through that cut. You can tell how much of the edge of the gouge you're using by the thickness of the shavings coming off. And I can pivot in. Of course, it's a good idea to keep the tool as close. If you go to the overhead camera now, Brent, if you're able to, number overhead. That's the other one, but that's one. We're getting there. That'll do for the minute. There we go. I'll tell you what, do you know what? I think the other one was better. What was the other camera you went to first? 2? Yeah, let's leave them there. So we'll see the tenon approach. And I'm pulling away from it, just pulling wood out of the way and getting near to it. So moving my tailstock out of the way. And now I'm going to go to camera 2. Going to tenon. Not concerned about torn grain. It's not the shape of the bowl yet. It's just removed material. But I do need to finish the tenon before we engage the rest of the bowl. This can be done again with whatever gizmos and gadgets you have. If you have a tool that leaves you a shape that you're fond of on the back, that's fine. A skew lid over on its side will certainly present a good shape. I'm going to use a spindle gouge and just cut down the side. I want about a 5-degree dovetail on here, nothing huge. And then the area at the back that the top of the jaws are going to sit on, I'm going to cut cleanly with my spindle gouge. The reason I'm doing that is that in this instance, with this particular bowl, I have in mind is that this is going to be on the table surface and this piece will be removed. It's not going to be integrated and become part of the bowl. There are other methods for doing that. We have to put an extra step in here to cut back into it as we redesign that. That's another lesson, another class, but we'll continue from here at the moment. So the penciled in area is the area I just cut with a spindle gouge, and that is the area that sits on top of the jaws as they grip the tenon. I'm going to cut it off again just so it isn't too distracting, and you'll see it disappear. There we go. So now we can come to our push cut. So if you remember, the draw cut was this way. The flute of the gouge is going to stay, move that shaving, it's going to stay in the same position as in pointing at 10 o'clock. I'm going to bring the handle round. Now I'm going to do a push cut up the bowl. So the flute hasn't changed its direction. I'm just now doing a bevel rubbing cut. I'm going to examine the difference. Can't get right in the corner. I'll come to that in a moment. Pick up the cut where you're comfortable. Bring the handle towards your body. Push up through the cut. A little bit much of a cut there, so we'll take. Sorry about the noise of the shaving hitting the visor. I can't control that. They do tend to make an echo. So already getting a much better finish off the tool. Now I'm also going to put a secondary foot on the bottom of this bowl because this bit, as I said, will be removed. So here I go. That's where the foot's going to be. Maybe we'll go to the overhead camera and we'll just place that foot in there. And we'll see this get picked up. That's the other one, but it's still good. There's the overhead. Come up around the form. Try and run the cut out as we get up to the top of the. If it's a big cut, then it will, of course, lift fibers on the top there. There's probably one or two small ones sticking out after that cut. They're there, they're really tiny. But take your journey all the way up. Now all I need to do is join the dots with the foot. that I've created. But the wood turning police will probably give me a ticket if I come downhill. If we go to camera 2 again, I think, Brent. If I turn downhill, even though there are times when it can work and can be necessary, then, oops, set on rather fast zoom. Then okay, but wherever possible on a bowl, normally cutting uphill will give us the best finish. So we did our draw cut, we've just done our bevel rubbing cut, but I can't quite get in next to the foot because the foot's in the way or the tenon's in the way. So the only way is to drop the handle down and come in next to it with a shear, which is using the back edge of the tool here along that tenon and then drawing away from it. So this will be a scrape angle with the tool, and I have a shear angle as I come away from that foot detail. Move the tool rest so that you're happy with its position, and of course be careful not to run off the edge of it. Do not adjust the height. The height should be so that when the tool is sitting straight on the tool rest, the cutting edge, as you can see there, is right on the money. When you lower the handle, the tool tip will come up, and it's quite a way when you're not used to looking at that. So it's tempting to lower the tool rest. Tool rest is fine where it is. I can actually come down the side of that foot and shear gently into the bowl and run the cut off. So you can see actually the color change too. It's a slightly more white, creamy looking cut. It's a very useful one to have. If you're new to this, I recommend you just practice on the bottom third of the bowl and run the cut out. And yes, you can, if you have a little bump, quite legitimately go back and forwards without any risk of a catch whatsoever. You just have to watch the top of that wing when you're doing this particular cut, because it will just score the wood. Now, if we look at that, maybe the overhead will see it. We'll see what we can see. I think you can see the difference on that. Actually, yes, you can. See the color change right where my finger is? Comes up where I shear cut, and then there's a bevel rubbing cut. So the bevel rubbing cut burnishes the wooden surface and looks all nice and shiny, but wait a minute, we're going to get the abrasives out and sand it anyway. So have a close look at both, and you'll find that your best finish will come from your shear cut, because you've literally got a sharp edge, almost as if it were like a skew. And please don't use a skew on a bowl unless you're only on end grain. Then you should be very happy with your finish. So he's good to go. I'm going to continue the shear up almost to the top. If this was a sphere, I can't shear any further than just before the top surface, otherwise I'll be running into a different grain direction. So understand that the shear cut can only come up from each side. If this was a ball, I'd have to be shearing up in this direction. Kind of gets confusing sometimes between vessels, bowls, spindle turning, bowl blanks. It does get a little bit confusing, I know. It'll save you a lot of sandpaper getting this finish on your wood, particularly some that is figured. You can see the chatoyance still blinking at us there, even though it is a shear cut and not a bevel rubbing cut. Okay, this now gets sanded to a finish, and we turn the piece around. I'm not sure I want to see sanding, so I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to lock the lathe, and the nice thing about the robust, you can't see in the shot, the button is right in the right place below the headstock. It's super easy to do. It stays where you put it. I love the many things about this lathe. That's one of my faves. It just becomes somewhere your hand falls to. And the other good thing is if you go to turn the lathe on, you've left it locked, it's got a little micro switch in there which stops the power coming on. How cool is that? I used to have in my apprenticeship, we used to have a coffee jar and a cookie jar, and a pound had to go in the coffee jar if you turn the lathe on with it locked, and we heard the skid marks going on, or you left your chuck key in your chuck. So we were never out of cookies, sometimes out of coffee, but people often did that. So thanks, Brent, for putting that one in. Now I'm going to remove the fitted screw chuck, which fits nicely into this lathe. It has its own little key on it onto this chuck here, and it has a changeable insert. But put that one out of the way, put my Make sure there's no shavings squashed in the area I'm going to be doing up. Get that one down to speed on there. Get it nipped up tight and we should be ready to roll. I'm going to clean up the surface face of the bowl first, again with a draw cut. So we'll go to camera number 2 with that draw cut. No adjustment on height, just pull away from the middle. So be careful as you come with a draw cut to this outer edge because you want to keep that nice crisp bit that you put on previously. But now I'm low enough so I can go back with a push cut. I can get the bevel rubbing cut I desire and slowly continue across the face of the bowl there. It's a happy gouge, 2 o'clock. I'm just supporting it with this hand. Whether you're over or under, that's entirely up to you. Work your way carefully across. If you're in the right place, there should be very little mark behind the gouge. Particularly with softer material, don't charge through into that hole because it will break away wood. Come off, take smaller cuts, and work it down. So I'm going to put a rim here and here, and we're going to do a texture, a rather fun texture, make it look like a bowl full of water with a baby bowl floating in the middle. Now I could offset it and do other exciting things, but we're going to keep it simple, stupid today. So at the moment, I'm going to place my thumb over on its side, push in with the tool quite close, about 3/8 into the water center, and push. And I'm going to then take this across to where I consider an appropriate spot. I think a little bit further. That looks nice. We'll roll that one down. And this one will be a bowl in the middle. So slowly turn that center piece out, little at a time. Come around the corner quite fast there. And then slowing up in the middle. Might get my arm occasionally in the shot. Okay, so back to the fun stuff. We're going to do a little recess. Back in the other direction, up into that corner. Away from that to the edge. Should leave me with what I want as a platform for this next texture. So basically I've got two borders and a flat surface here. This ultimately gets sanded first. I've got quite a good finish off the tool. Brent's practicing juggling his new gouges. If you heard that in the background, he's a little bit to learn, but we'll give him a go. He's not. Sack the juggler, they say. Join my club. So this surface is as flat as I can get. And what we're going to do now, we're going to use Trent Bosch's carving jig in the tool rest. And I'm going to just show the jig before we adjust cameras, to show you what I'm doing, because the guys will need a little bit of time to get used to this one. This is and this is in the drawer, isn't it? So somebody's going to win this actual rest. So some very lucky person. Trent was obviously feeling generous and great bit of equipment. Loosen the handle, it rotates and allows you to adjust the position for carving. So the tool rest comes out. Then I'm going to place it in the tool beam itself. And then I'm going to, that's perfect. I'm going to undo my chuck on the bowl. and place it on top of this jig. So do it gently. It's a little bit high. What I've got to try and do here is get this in a position where the camera, the overhead camera, can see what I'm going to be doing. So I'll do my best. If we go to the overhead, let's see how good we've got. Wonderful. We're going to orientate the grain so that it's hard to see with this big bit here. I'm going to orientate it so that when I'm carving, I'm coming across at a slight angle. So I'm not going to carve with the grain in either direction. And I'm going to come across at that angle. I'm going to bring my carving unit over. This is a micromotor. This one happens to be called a Strong 202. Nick Agar Studios is what that stands for, if anybody's wondering. And then the cutters. And this is going to be the small piece with the cutter in it. I plug this in before I start it. And of course, I'm going to have my visor down. Now, I'm just going to zoom this in. I know we're struggling a little bit for light. This particular one I'm using has triangle cutters on the end of it. And there is also a round one. And these are replaceable carbide tips. Slightly new to some of this. They've been around a while, but only recently discovered more en masse. And I really like the effect that this triangle cutter I'm going to use on the surface gives me. And you may be expecting straight lines, noughts and crosses and little grooves, but it leaves quite a gorgeous result. Almost one that I thought, do I want to share this? But it's too good for me not to. If you're wondering where they are, it's not a robust tool. It's a company called Manpa. And I'm sure Brent won't mind me showing that. King Arthur's tools actually bring those into the US, but they are really cool. This is an 8 shaft, and it's going to be spinning around at 25,000 RPM. And I'm going to be very gentle with the way I go about my motion with this. The twin fingers, I'm going to hold it with both hands, and I'm going to be motioning across the surface. It won't take long either. So if I put it in forwards rotation, it'll cut better, Nick. Let's go again. There we go. This is going to look like waves. When you cut this, I'm being very gentle. I'm floating on the surface. So I'm always nearly halfway. I'm going to be careful to try and not hit the edges, of course, but I didn't finish turning them. So if I do nick one, I can return back and just sweeten it up. You're actually the first live audience to see this demo, so that's nice to be a first. It can get away from you, this tool, if you let go. So I do have a strong hold of it, but I'm being very fluid with the way I cut. almost to the end, and that's probably only 1.5 minutes to do the whole of a bowl surface. Pretty quick, I reckon. So this is now completely carved. I'm going to take my carving tool out of harm's way. Unscrew it and put it back in the lathe. And we'll get back to our original camera positions. Make sure there's no shavings in the way of my jaws. And thank you, Trent, very much for the donation of your carving jig. So tool rest back in place. Now one should burnish that surface with either a bristle brush or some shavings so that we can make sure we get rid of any tufts of stuff that might be on the surface. My bristle brush is still packed, I didn't get it out. I'm going to use the shavings that we just cut. And that normally does an ample job. Make a fistful of them and press onto the surface. That. And again, mind with your fingers when you're doing that you don't push through and run out of sawdust. So the next thing I'm going to do is put a color onto the surface here. I'm going to use an airbrush that we did earlier. Turn the compressor on. Starting off with a black dye. That's the color I'm going to be using. Double action again. Spreading in the middle so I can see where I'm spraying. Across to the edge. Out to the edge. I've got a good cover. So that's got that job done. The next thing I'm going to put over it is a clear sealer. This is another Chromacraft product. It's a clear dye sealer. Looks like water in the bottom of this thing. This is just going to put a seal coat over the top of my die so that no dye has a chance of coming up through into any product that I put on the top of it. So that's looking good. And now I'm going to go for a gilt. And I have 3 gilt products here. So we've got this beautiful sapphire blue, which is another Chromacraft product. And this one's a pearlescent. I'm going to use a toothbrush to spread it over all of the texture. Maybe a good idea to wear gloves as you do this one. It's kind of hard to wash off. Get it all over the whole deal. Remember, I haven't finished turning these beads completely. So trying to do this and not get contamination is going to be virtually impossible. Well, it is if you're named Nick Agar anyway. So I use a brush, get it completely cover the whole deal. You'll start to see the waves appear when I said bowl full of water. It's a very wavy texture I've just showed you. Of course, it makes this bowl rather unpractical as it's already full. But it certainly shows you the texture. And this can be used in a whole bunch of ways because my mind, every time I do this now, and I've only came up with this texture, and to my eyes, it's pretty fresh. 6-7 weeks ago when I got my hand on these new cutters. So it's kind of exciting. I've got all sorts of ideas of where I might put it. But it just, for today's demo, it certainly is a good representation of what water texture could look like. And we've seen many textures these days. There's so many wonderful artists doing amazing things. It's it's a constant eyeful of fun stuff on the internet. Now I'm going to put a little bit of amethyst into this. just to maybe put a little bit of color into the deeper blue of my sea, if you like, not overdoing it, just a little bit. So I'm not actually waiting between coats for it to dry this time. Kind of hard, depending on what you're seeing on the cameras, because you know the TV monitors, what I'm seeing with my eyes and the cameras may look a little different. But this area here, for example, is somewhat deeper in color than some of the others. And that's just color settings on your TVs. You may be seeing better than we are. This stuff does take some hours to dry properly before you might want to give it a second coat. If you want more pop, more glint on it, then that's fair enough. If I can see where I put my gloves, I'm going to put a glove on now, and they're just going to hit the top of those waves and just accent just a little bit of them with the Egyptian gold. And I swear I put a box of gloves out. There they are. Short supply. These things have gone up in price too since COVID. So our beloved Harbour Freight and the like, you have to hunt down there. I think there's all sorts of places, including the drugstores where you can buy them, but mechanics gloves will all work. You don't really want latex, you want vinyl. These are nitrile, even best. Just a little bit on the finger, just like I do with the Viking Sunset bowls, and we just kiss the top of that surface just a little bit with some of that gold, and it just lifts. I'm not so sure that camera's getting it perfectly, just probably because of the angle of it, but we've got a little bit of that beautiful gold texture coming into view. So now I'm going to go back and clear the edges. Just see what we think. So this is like the white water, if you like. It happens on top of those waves. Just as a little bonus. Great effect. I love it. You just got in for another close-up on that one. That's awesome. At least we'll have a little different camera to look at. We can zoom that one a little. Super slow zoom. kind of touch it and it zoomed. Okay, maybe this will give us a little bit more of that color reflection. You can see it glinting a little bit there. It's a better view. Maybe we can even zoom it a little bit. Might even get us even more close around there. There she goes. You're doing a great job of being omnipresent. So we can see those waves glinting up. We zoom out on that one and leave it full frame on the bowl. Perfect. So I'm just going to tool those bits where impatient Nick smudged over the edges. And give you a quick. Then I'm going to cut it all off. So of course it's wise for this to dry. And as I said, some hours. We'll just rotate this around. Because of course the dust could stick to this. I want to be careful not to hit the waves. Come from that edge. So I have all kinds of ideas you can imagine for this. We go to camera 2, we can look at it end on once more. Little waves coming up. And there's a little bowl full of choppy water. And it's up to you how rough you want your sea. But it's a super easy way of getting a dramatic effect. So I can see table mats and platter rims and all sorts being done this way. So now if you haven't already photographically placed that in your mind, you're too late because I'm going to cut it all off. So wind and speed up again. Now we're going to take a little bit more bowl out and put a new rim. And I'm good on time, yeah?
You're good.
Let's just look at the potentials of rims. Possibilities of rims are pretty endless. Baby bowl, maybe not such a thick bowl on the back of the piece. Maybe this comes in almost like a Mexican hat, and this is very thin until I get to the bowl form, and that echoes on the other side. There's various plans we can have, but for my hour-long demonstration, I'm putting in what I can in the time. So rather than go to a narrow rim or even thinner that I might have on a bowl, I'm going to use this as my demonstration or presentation area so that we can get some fun things going on around this edge. May just knock the rim down a little bit smaller so it's a bit more in keeping. Do a little cleaner cut on the inside, and then we'll move on. Just a little bit smaller. That's nice. Up to that edge, point the flute inside the bowl, open up to 2 o'clock, around the corner, slowly finish as you get near the middle of your piece. Now I should have a good enough finish off my bevel rubbing cut along this surface. If we have a closer look at it, excuse me, zoom in fast again. It's acceptable. This is clean. It's not going to need a great deal of sanding. There's no big nasty lumps of pick out, tiny little bit of blue surface from the carving, but I'll live with that. So I'm just going to hit that very briefly with the sandpaper because I'm going to use an airbrush. I need to take away any tool marks because the scratches will actually show up under a die. So I've wanted out a shot just to grab some fresh abrasives. 180, 240, 320 will do me for this moment, but you really should go probably to 600, at least 400 for that finish. So excuse me for a little bit of the dust. I'm only going to do the piece I'm working on. So when it comes to the use of stencils, there are many things we can use. The edge of anything, I'm just going to bring some over here. The edge of anything you can spray over, doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to bring some of my goodies onto the table. Let me see if I can look around me for an edge of anything. Okay, here is a lid of one of my pots that I'm using. So I can turn my lid and I can use that as a shape with the airbrush to spray over, just as a sort of stencil template. I'm going to use the darker colors so you can see, and we'll probably lay the colors down afterwards. So first lesson is spraying up to an edge of something. And it's not going to be taking long before you see the potential of my little lid here. If I just went all the way around the piece like this, let's go camera number 2, then you can imagine if I had some care, this would be a pretty pattern all the way around it. I might choose to come up against it in areas and throw some alternate shapes on there. It's all sorts of fun. You're only a sand off away from doing it again. It's not like I'm so committed I can't go back to it in any shape or form. Let's find some other edges. So these are some of the stencils I choose to like to use. This one has a straight edge on it. As far as straight line on here, while we're at it, a couple of them. And they happen to have some little patches of fun in the middle of them. So you can be as abstract, crazy as you like. You need to give things strength on their edges. So you start to get sort of the illusion of 3D on some of the pieces. This is a texture mesh version. This one I use a lot on fish. It's kind of fun. The air will pretty much hold it down, but of course you can tape it on and hold it, and then you can hinge it back and forth to see what whether you've hit the target or not. And again, let's just hit that guy. We've got a kind of leopard spotty patch on the bowl. I'll involve some colors on this in a little while, but first of all, I want to show you what a peel off can do on this surface. The peel off stencil is literally just that. I'm going to take, this one is a butterfly shape. I'm going to take the one that leaves the stencil left on the mask, and it gives me a window. When I say window, this is what I'm talking about, this hole in the material. It has a lot of static, plus I have a fan behind me, so it's kind of plonk it and see. Of course, you can take it off and rearrange it. It's up to you the angle you put this on. This is a swallowtail, very recognizable butterfly shape. So that's why I like to use it. Plonk that one on, pat it down as good as you can. Some of this needs to get out of the way. Now, ideally, you will take masking tape and you'll come around the form and you will stop any opportunity of overspray getting to that point. Darned if I can see any that I had out. I might get lucky in my pot. There we go. I did have some ready. Sometimes I surprise myself. So protect your investment by masking off. This tape, I believe, I got in agricultural supplies. Store, very low tack. Your Scotch blue, of course, you can get, or your frog tape. So just play safe and protect it from the overspray. I'm going to use 3 colors here, just like I did on the leaf, because that's what I have out, and I happen to like them. Your butterfly, you choose your colors. I'm going to start light first. You spray inside the wing area. Don't get on it too heavy. Sneak up on it. So this is Chromacraft wood resonated wood dye. Straight out the bottle. No mixing, no messing. Leave it alone. Just use it. Wear appropriate protection when you're spraying. Any mask is better than no mask, but of course a vapor mask is going to be your best bet. We're in a big area here. We do have the fans on and air conditioning, so you know we're up to speed. But just bear in mind where you're spraying, what you're spraying. All dust is bad for you. Just consider that. This is okay, but the hardest thing about a butterfly is symmetry. So I designed these, and I'm going to show you one of these because I love it so much. This is one side of my butterfly's wing. For those of you who may struggle to even write your name clearly like I do, this makes life a lot easier. So we just whack that over the surface. It's almost immediately dry. Back the other side. There he goes. I mustn't forget my butterfly's body also. And let's give the wings a little bit extra. So I'm going to put that over the top. Look for his head. Give him a little bit extra design. Turn it over, do the other side. Now he's looking smart. Okay, what I need to do now is go around the outside of my shape and allow overspray just to hit the edges of the butterfly's wings, otherwise they won't have an edge. Then we're going to take this off and give him his little feelers. When you're taking your tape off, just be mindful that you want to keep and look after your stencil material. If you spent some time cutting out a shape, you may have bought some of the plain frisket, done it yourself. So slowly roll that off, nice and easy. Reveal your butterfly. Then what you have to do is give him his feelers or his tentacles. So we'll throw, I think these ones are going to go today. There's his little feelers. Octopus have tentacles, Nick, not butterflies. So that's pretty easy and a pretty dramatic effect. And of course, we've got a lot of area on. Oh, but we can also fog a bit of color into this. You can get what I call fiddleitis. You can go too far and not know when to stop. And that's all very easy to do when you're having fun. So sneak up on it. It's always only, you know, like we said earlier, one tool away from perfection, was it, Brent? Or one tool away from greatness. And as I think Hoslock says, it's just that one last cut, you know. Yes, they are. And fiddleitis is just, well, one more design. And I've got kind of what I'm looking for. And it is super easy to go that extra step too far. But if you don't explore potentials, then you know, you never will find your way. I wasn't quite happy the way they look, so I'm going to disguise them a little bit more. Let's throw a couple of bugs on here while we're at it. I got an ant. Seems to be wherever you go in the world, there is ants. But my point really is, in this very short demonstration, is to have some fun. You know, it's what we're all supposed to be doing with our craft, enjoying a little bit of it. And for me, you know, this is just a real bunch of fun. So I'm just ghosting these on now, just to give it a little suggestion of the fact that you may be looking for some leaves. And I think that is my stop time. I kind of, you know, not sure about this patch down here where I used them. I like to do that work, demonstrated, find that kind of and just throw it out there as an idea. So I'm happy with the way that looks on the arm with the lid. But there you go. That hopefully was a little bit of fun. Don't forget the texture, the bowl full of water. That's saves you all the job of hollowing. And that's a bunch of fun. I hope that you enjoyed that, Brent. You stayed awake, my friend. So that's a start. We can put me back on the camera. And certainly, even though I think Todd's rushed off in the office because things are getting printed out for him to rush back and read to me. If you've got any questions.
Oh, I guess, yeah, we have some questions for you. I want to make sure that my mic is being heard. So test. Okay, my mic is being heard. So we got a couple of questions that have come in, Nick.
You can put me back on that if you like. Sure.
Oh, right.
Put my hat back on.
Camera 3, please. There we go. Sorry.
Far away.
Okay. Can you provide a link where somebody can buy the rotary cutter?
Not so much a link. We can certainly tell you, katools.com. So kingarthurstools.com. And they are mini carvers on, I think, their homepage. They're so new, literally, as of the last week or so. So excited to use those. And the fact that we can replace those cutters, there are other tools on the market which are also wonderful. And I probably have one of all of them, like you guys do. But this is a fresh one. I like the thought that I can rotate that cutter. So katools.com should get you there where you need to be.
And if they can't find katools.com, they can just Google King
They
Arthur's
can
tools.
email me. I will put them on the link.
Very
Nick
good.
At Nick Agar Studios. But King Arthur's tools are the importer of the Manpower tools.
Okay, the brand of the chuck and the chuck insert with the screw.
Yep.
And where can those be bought?
So this is an Axminster SK114. And these are now available from Woodturning, thewoodturningstore.com. So great chuck. I've had a 25 plus relationship with Axminster over the years. I've used many chucks on the market, but they certainly have the greatest variety of jaw accessories and stainless steel body. It's very nice. You can read more on that if you need to, but that's an SK114. And the screw chuck that was in it, actually, I think there are two ways that you can buy this kit, as I would call it, and I'll let you look into that. But one kit involves a faceplate ring and the screw chuck, and I believe the other one just comes with the standard set of jaws and your shorter chuck key. As I use the wonderful button jaws to reverse pieces on, that's why I've got this long chuck key. So don't expect that to come in the box. It comes with a shorter one, which is also behind me. And this is also an interchangeable screw center. So it's not fixed, the machine just out of that one piece. You can release that screw and change it. But I do like the bite. I have to say that it's not just gripping on a circle. It actually bites onto a shoulder there. I'm not sure if you can go to 2 and see that. We'll show them quickly if that's okay. I've had the question. You see that little shoulder machined on it? So those jaws bite actually nicely into that detail. So appreciate that question, and hopefully that was the answer that the people would want.
Now, Axminster as a company has been around a long time, but hasn't had a real big presence in the United States, right?
No, it's very new in the States. I'm delighted to have a relationship with them. I have done for all this time. I used to teach for Axminster Skill Center, and indeed it was a little bit, leaving my Riverside studio was hard enough. And of course, with businesses like Axminster on your doorstep, you almost feel like you're leaving part of your family. But now their goodies are getting over here, so at least we don't have to wait for the shipping, etc. And these awkward times where everything, we understand, it takes longer. But now the stock is within the US. So that's the only place you can order them from is thewoodturningstore.com.
Yeah, and little plug here, the woodturningstore.com is one of our dealers.
Oh, that's kind of good, isn't it?
They carry robust lathes, they carry our gouges, they carry all our tool rests. And I'm also proud to say that Axminster is a new dealer for robust tools in the UK.
Yes,
and they're quite a big organization, and they've got an American Beauty. They're going to be doing a big intro promo at the end of the month on this, and they carry our tool rests and stuff. Yep. So
we have a bit of a dream bundle going on here.
Yeah,
Steve Fulgoni, very respectable, as you said, Brent, and super fast at shipping, and that's what we all crave for.
There was a question about guy having trouble with on silver maple, and
silver maple is just soft. You know, we have to deal with different densities of wood, and you just got to have a very sharp tool and hone those edges and understand grain direction and the way you cut it. What was his problem? Did he say?
I think I seem to have lost it. Maybe, oh, it's over here.
So many screens, so little time.
It doesn't want to scroll up to it. Sorry.
Doesn't matter.
I think it had to do with fiber pull out and getting, getting tooling marks, getting tool marks out.
Tooling mark bruising. And that's why understanding the 3 cuts I tried to show you, although it was rather fast, I do understand. Your push, pull, and shear cuts. So with the softer materials, they really jump to the front of your game. The pull cut, as I showed you, tears it out. Looks like a bale of straw. That isn't acceptable. And I want to get rid of those before near my bowl form. Sharpening the tool after you've done that's not a bad idea. And actually honing it is an even better idea. So for that last cut, you've got a super sharp tool. But it does shear well. It's a softer, easier wood to work. Now, if you're using carbide tools on that, then perhaps you want to consider ones that offer a slight inclination at an angle rather than dead straight. But it's a great forgiving tool to start to learn with, which is why I use it a lot for teaching. It's a good question.
That's it for your questions on this, Nick.
Fantastic. Please.
Oh, one more?
Oh, that one popped up.
Carver power driver you're using, and is that KA tools as well?
No, it's not. That was a strong micromotor. That was actually from Treeline, USA.
Oh, so the question, in case you didn't hear it, because Todd isn't on the microphone.
The question was the micromotor tool I was using from KA Tools as well? It was only the cutter that was from KA Tools. The micromotor was actually from a company called Treeline. And PJ at Treeline is the most helpful person you'll get on the end of a phone if you want to ask them about that motor. That particular one, if you want to know, was the Strong 202. Seeing as we're giving away this info.
Turn your compressor off.
Sure. My compressor, she keeps burping. Oh, there we go. I'm not sure where there it is. There it is. There's the unit, and the hand piece I showed you was up to 45,000 RPM hand piece. So, but Treeline, certainly the most helpful company I can think of to send you. There are other companies, of course, that will sell this, but those guys are super helpful and knowledgeable rather than just giving you a unit and you do what you want with it. So that was the driving unit. And into that went this hand piece, which if you go to Treeline, you will need to have them supply it, and they supply it with an 1/8 collet. If you go elsewhere, you may find a shock the system. This is coming from the dental industry, that you have a 3/32 collet and you can't upsize it. So the Treeline sell theirs with an 1/8 collet in it. You can then downsize it to 3/32 or further. So it also needs to go up to the hilt, let's call it, up to the shoulder to lock in place. Dremel will also work, but you've got to make sure on your Dremel that it does sink all the way in, because otherwise you're going to have more chance of something wobbling. The other thing, guys, if you're looking to get one of these, is to make sure you have a unit which has a collet in it and not a 3-jaw chuck, which is going to grip it. It has to spin accurately. So very important. Again, thanks, Brent. And thanks to everybody for having me. I'm down here somewhere. It's been great to be here. I hope that was some fun and enjoyable. And I know you've got more goodies coming your way. But Brent, Todd, thanks for pressing all the buttons and keeping us going. I hope the viewers appreciate it. It's great to be in Little Slice of Heaven. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Nick, thank you. And don't go away. We're going to go over a few things here. I want to show you just a little highlights on our Scout lathe and on our Sweet 16 lathe. Then we're going to do our final door prizes. We've got 7 or 8 more door prizes for you.
Awesome.
And Nick's going to help on that for a bit.
Sure.
Do some of the
turn my mic off while you do the Scout and remind me to put it back on.
Yeah, you can turn off for a minute. So I'm going to go over and do a little bit on the Scout here. I'm following around, Nick. And Todd's going to help me. And then I'm also going to do some close-ups with a portable camera. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to show a few things we get asked about. And so Todd, are you ready to go to the camera and do a little close-ups for us? And then at some point, then we'll switch over to camera 4 too. Okay, so thanks for putting up with all the kind of crowd here. This has been a fun experience for us with these. We got 4 different cameras, and we're guys that are used to like maybe looking at Facebook, trying to pull this off. And so I appreciate everybody's patience with everything. I'd like to show you a little bit about the Scout and the Sweet 16 before we wrap up with the last bit of door prizes and the grand prize. So the Scout is our smallest lathe. It's a 14-inch machine, and you can buy it as a bench machine. So you can buy you don't have to get a stand. And setting on, I think, a 30-inch bench, it gives it at about a 45-inch spindle height. And most lathes that you buy stock are going to be about a 44-inch, 45-inch standard spindle height. So that's a standard thing for most people. The machine is available in 110 or 220, and you can get it in 1.5 or 1 horsepower. So stock is 1 horsepower. Optional motor is is 1.5. And both of those are available in 110. And this is the only lathe that we do that's can be wired up in 110. So the controls are really simple. We have digital readout here for the RPM. So we have forward down here, we have reverse, and we have variable speed. So if you want to shoot up here, Todd, the top speed is 3,000 RPM. And the most is the fan noise, the noise of the fan over the motor. And it drops down to 50. So you got 50 to 3,000 RPM in one speed dial. Shut it off. I'm going to zoom back out, Todd. We have this full-length stop bar. And so this bar, red bar along the bottom, runs the full length. And you just press that bar and you can stop it. So you can stop it with your hip. You can push on it with your hand. Find that I just grab it like that and stop it unless I'm leaning against the machine. So there's no belts to change or anything. There's 24 index positioning. So this particular one, if you zoom back out, Scott, before I go to the handheld, we've got the bed extension on this. So this gives you another 14 inches of spindle length. So if you look at our, got a nice video on this on the website. So I'm turning in the video, I turn a big long 4x4 just for fun in there. And then this extension also comes off and it goes over here on the end of the machine. And it drops down into a lower position. You've seen other lathes that do this where you've got a little short bed out here. And then you can turn up to 21 inches outboard on this machine. So it's threaded 1.25 inches on both ends and a number 2 Morris taper on both ends. Number 2 Morris taper here. So I think that's kind of a quick overview of the machine. I'm going to switch to the handheld now, if you don't mind, Todd. And I will say that this is a little bit lower resolution, but it's going to be able to get me into show you some details that I want to do about the universal stand. So I mentioned on the back that you can mount the bed extension on this end so that you can turn outboard. It goes onto these 3 holes. Now the universal stand, we make this specifically for the Scout lathe, but it's also adaptable to any small lathe. And we have a lot of people that buy just the stand to put their mini lathe on it, or we've had up to a Jet 1642 on it. And I wouldn't recommend anything bigger than a Jet 1642. So you can, sorry about that. I got to learn where to keep my hand without putting a finger over it. So you can expand the stand out lengthwise here with these bolts. And this is solid center section. And then these end sections telescope in and out. So that allows you to adapt it to lathes of different length. The stand is also very adjustable as far as height goes. And you see a series of holes here where we can raise it up and down and put it in these different holes and change the spindle height. Now, the big thing that we did this, what we call it the universal stand, is so that you can set the stand up for a seated turner. And a lot of times when you are turning from a seated position, the lathe is away from you. And by tipping the lathe forward, I'm going to get on the other side. I think the light's better. By tipping the lathe forward, you can get it to a more amenable position. You do that by, on each side, there's these adjustable pivots. So it pivots on this back here. And then you can select different hole slots here to tip the lathe forward. And if you looked at pictures of people turning from a seated position, the lathe is actually often tipped forward. It puts it in a more normal, natural position for you for turning. So we do sell these independently without the Scout lathe. And as a matter of fact, probably half of them that we sell are for people who are putting them on a different lathe. And they can be a really good way for somebody who needs to turn from a seated position to position the lathe in a really friendly way. You can also get this with casters. So we have these casters. These are the same casters that go on our Sweet 16. We're going to go over to Sweet 16 in just a minute. There's a pivot caster on one end swivel caster, and then 2 straight casters on the other end. And they stay mounted to the machine. And right now it's on the caster, so it moves quite easily. I hope this is all making sense. And if we want to take it off the casters, we raise up this lever, and that drops the lathe back down on the floor. And I got to do the same thing on the other side. And then when you want to put it on casters and move it, you just stand on it, snap it down, and then you're back on the casters. Just as simple as that. So that's an option that you can get with the machines. So with that, let's go back to camera 3, and I'm going to do a little bit of an overview on the Sweet 16. Look at that mess Nick made. Can you see that? Gee whiz. Well, like you can't probably. Here, turn 4 back on. See, you invite a guy over to your house. And this is the mess he leaves you. Okay, back to 3, please. Okay. So this is our Sweet 16, and Todd, you can check too to see if we've got any questions on this one. I don't have this one. I don't have this one plugged in. A little bit of a fib. You know, if you can get this 1.5 horsepower, 2 horsepower, Sweet 16. So, anyway, if you get it in 1.5 horsepower, we can do that in 1/10. So you can't get this machine in 1/10. And when you go to 2 horsepower, though, you've got to go to 220. And the big thing about this machine is that it has a removable gap section. And I'd invite you to, I'm not going to do it here because of time constraints, but this section, raised bed, right here, comes out, okay? So, and I can take this section out then, and then I go from a 16-inch lathe to a 32-inch lathe. And on the video on our website, I turn a 32-inch tabletop in here. So you've got from here down to here 16 inches, so double that is 32. So it's pretty impressive to have a 32-inch tabletop swinging in this machine. And quite frankly, it was the biggest piece I've ever turned personally. And it was a little bit something to get used to have a piece that big doing it. And when you do that, when you take this off, you can hang it over here, hang the bed over here. So you've got a support. This piece comes right over here. And you've got a support here for your banjo. Want to zoom back out a little bit, Todd? Yeah, about like that. Thank you. So then you can move your banjo over here to the back side. And the banjo is reversible. And so that you take the handle out. And you can connect it over on the other end. Of course, I'm trying to do that left-handed when I'm right-handed. There we go. Then you can turn the tool rest around. You use your banjo backwards. And it's a nice heavy banjo. It's actually the same banjo that we use on the American Beauty. We just cut it off a little short here so that it matches the swing of the 16-inch Sweet 16. And with that banjo turned backwards, then you can reach out and you can really get into a lot of cuts and a lot of awkward positions you wouldn't normally be able to. So the other thing you can do with this gap section is you can move it down to the end, and there's a bed extension. And so you've increased your spindle capacity by 14 inches when you take this out and move it down to the end. So if I'm given 2 words to describe the Sweet 16, and I'm the only person that's ever given me 2 words to describe the Sweet 16, my description of it is compact capacity. So the American Beauty is really dialed in for people doing bowls and vessels. I mean, you can turn a pen on it, you know, but it's really dialed in for people who like to throw big chunks of wood on and make big shavings and have a nice, big, solid, stable machine. The Sweet 16 is designed for people who maybe one day they're turning a pen, the next day they're making a pepper mill, maybe they're making a platter and they need the gap section out because they're making a big platter or wall hanging. or they want to take the bed section down to the end and they want to turn like a walking stick or turn a bed post, something like that. So these tend to go more for general interest turners and to people who are making furniture, who are using the lathe for furniture making activities. American Beauty, more for people who are really banging out bowls and vessels and like a nice big heavy lathe and be able to throw a big out of balance chunk on it. And the Scout is a nice smaller machine for people who are doing smaller work, be it bowls or pepper mills or any of the other things that wood turners do, where a 14-inch capacity is quite satisfactory. And then it has the ability to occasionally turn a bigger piece, say up to 21 inches. And I say 21, I say occasionally because if I was going to routinely turn 20-inch pieces, I'd be a lot happier with the American Beauty. But you certainly can do one occasionally on the Scout. We've never had anybody upgrade that I know of from an American Beauty or from a Sweet 16. And we do have some people with one of each, believe it or not. When people buy our lathes, they tend to tell us, this is the last lathe I'm going to get. This is my final lathe. So with that, if there's aren't yammering my favorite subject, robust wood lathes, and we'll give away some more. Door prizes. Well, there was one other question that came in earlier that I forgot to mention, and we've had questions about supplies and material prices and stuff. And for the most part, we've been able to maintain our supplies from the get-go. We designed the equipment so that there wasn't anything really proprietary about the purchase components. So in other words, if for some reason we couldn't get the switch from our normal supplier, this is a standard 22 millimeter operator, they call it, and we can go to a dozen different manufacturers and get a replacement switch. So same thing like with the inverters and the motor, standard thing. Motors, but there was a time when we couldn't get them, so we went to Marathon, which is actually made by Leeson, by Regal Beloit. Regal Beloit owns both Leeson and Marathon. Marathon and Leeson motors come off the same assembly line. They just have a different label on the end of them when they go into the box. So we switched to Marathon motors for a while because we couldn't get the Leeson, but it's a seamless thing to you, the customer. But we have had some issues like that where we've had to chase things around and look for things. The biggest thing that's hurt us has been material costs. And for instance, on the American Beauty, we showed you at the very beginning of the presentation, the square tube that we use for the bed for the American Beauty. Well, pre-COVID, the tube for the long bed, which is just under 6 feet long, we buy that cut delivered for us. We were paying about $125 for that tube delivered. So earlier this week, we just placed an order for some more long bed tubes, and it was 420. Help me out, Scott. Todd, I don't like my Scott.
422 and some change.
422 and change, from $125 to $422, more than triple, 3.5 times. That's the extreme. Things like the 1-inch cold roll that we buy for the shafts for the tool rest, that's up about 175%. That's on the low end for materials. So between 175% increase to over 300%. Components went up quite as bad, but everything up. And we had a price increase in May. I thought things were going to be peaking in May, and they did not. And so we're sitting tight. We've been told that first quarter of 2022, we have our fingers crossed for that, and that we won't have to be able to raise prices. We have not raised prices at rest for something like 9 years. We've kept the same price for rest for something like 9 years. So anyway, if there are any more questions, we'll go back over to the last of our door prizes. And pardon us while we rearrange this camera quick.
Need to be on.
And don't panic, we're going to get things set up here in just a second. So Todd, have you got some names drawn for us? Okay, so number 15, door prize, is a set of woodturning videos from our dealer Lyle Jamison. And Lyle, many of you know, is a really experienced hollowing teacher, and has done a lot of presentation, has had a hollowing rig on the market probably longer than anybody, a captive hollowing rig. So Lyle's one of our dealers. He's over in Michigan. And so the winner for that is Ray Ewing, E-W-I-N-G, Ray Ewing. So thanks, Lyle, for that. Number 16 is we have a handle from Trent Bosch. Get this back a little bit. We have a handle from Trent Bosch, one of his tool handles that he makes out at his studio out in Fort Collins, Colorado. And he's one of our very good dealers too. And to sweeten it up a little bit, we've thrown in one of our 1/2-inch Turner's Edge bowl gouges. So make a nice set for you, a Trent handle and a Turner's Edge bowl handle. And the winner for that is Larry Cavallino. Larry Cavallino, C-A-V-O-L-I-N-A. Not to be outdone by Trent, we have a Turner's Edge 1/2-inch spindle gouge with a 16-inch handle. And we've talked about those previously. And the winner for that, well, excuse me, this is number 17. In case I said the number wrong, this is number 17. The winner for that is Charles Felton. Charles, this is yours. Just send us an email. Okay, 18, we're going to have Nick. We're going to have Nick jump in here. And Nick has used these tools before, and I'm going to have him talk about them just very briefly.
Yeah, many years of using the Woodcut Proform. Excellent tool for hollowing. And for those who are a little bit intimidated by hollowing and the thought of perhaps something catching over the tool rest with an open cutter, it's a guarded cutter. It's extremely easy to adjust. Loosening that screw, it comes with its wrenches, of course. You adjust this screw, and then the grub screw inside there alternates on a cam, so you can expose or limit the amount that of the cutting edge is allowing you to cut, both front and on the side. It really, if you look at it, resembles from the days of hook tools. And the shading, of course, can come around and eject from the side there. Very well made, comes with a very stout handle, and primarily an end grain hollowing tool, but it will work on side grain too. If I'm doing some bottles quite often, I will go in actually go to the side and offer that up. So yeah, also, just for those of you who know, you can also attach an even longer handle on the end of this guy if you want to. So a great tool. And that was prize number 18. And I would like Todd to tell me which person has been lucky enough to win that.
That'll be Lewis Cole.
Lewis Cole.
Lewis
Lucky
Cole.
Lewis. Lucky Lewis.
Lucky Lewis. Yeah, so if you want to do number 19.
Sure. So number 19 is a little bit from yours truly at Chromacraft, guys. Thank you very much, Don Rawlins of Chromacraft, for donating these. There is a packet of peel-off stencils. You may or may not be into airbrushing, but you can literally roll over those, or you can use a pen and go over those if you used to use them as an edge. So there's a multi-pack to all the pieces you see in the picture there are contained within. And if you want to have a go at that for an airbrush, there are some of the Chromacraft wood dyes. There's a multi-pack there, resonated wood dye. And of course, if you're not into your airbrushing, you're good to go with your coloring. So congratulations. And the winner of the Chromacraft bundle is
Don Geiger.
God, that was funny. I think I said Don. I thought I was going to say the owner had won it.
No, no.
Don Geiger. Well, there's a dessert thing. He's been super generous to you. So that's wonderful.
Yes, there's
that's
Don Geiger.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. And taking that a little further, I didn't get on to demonstrating any of these, but those who do smaller items, these are, again, from Chromacraft, these are die pens. So it's the same die that was in the selection of dies we just showed you, except there are 14 in this packet. They are chisel pointed pens, so used with care, they can work on the rotating wood on the lathe for spinning tops, doorknobs, bottle stoppers. And also in this bundle is the chroma gilt. And there is the 3 colors that I used for that previous demonstration. These are the newest colors. So you've got amethyst, sapphire blue, and the Egyptian gold. And of course, I couldn't not put in Viking silver, because that's where it all started. So the lucky person who wins that Chromacraft bundle is
Mike Duffy.
Mike Duffy.
Yep.
Good for you, Mike. Enjoy it very much. Okay, Brent, now we're getting to the big guns. I'll go back over to you, sir.
Okay, there were a couple more questions here. One is the video of this presentation will be online for 30 days. Everybody who is registered will get an email with a link for that, probably on Monday or something like that, when life starts to get back to normal. And then there was a question about RPM readout on the American Beauty. And I'm going to just briefly, if we can turn the onto camera 1 again. Okay, try to get this right. So we do not have a digital readout on the American Beauty, but we do have the dial graduated in the RPM range. And there's 2 series of lines, one for if you're on the high speed pulley set or if you're on the low speed pulley set. So we do have that available, and that's standard. You see that on all the machines now. So that doesn't give you an exact number, but it does give you a pretty good approximation of the speed that you're turning. There's also, if you want to email me for a link, there's a really good handheld tachometer for 20 bucks on Amazon. And if you want to email me at brent@turnrobust.com or even info at turnrobust.com, I will send you a link to that handheld digital, and it's really accurate. Well, we've had a number of people who have picked them up and really like them. And yeah, it's big in China, but it's 20 bucks, and you set it up here, and there's my RPM. So that's actually going to be a lot cheaper situation for you. I think we've got. Are there any other questions before we go to the grand prize? Nick was giving me a thumbs up all the time when I was talking about that digital tachometer.
I was trying to get you to look at this camera, not the TV.
Oh, okay.
Question?
There's one. Does the universal stand fit the Sweet 16?
Oh no, the universal stand does not fit. The universal stand does not fit the Sweet 16. The Sweet 16 has its own set of legs. Of the 3 lathes that we make, quite frankly, the Sweet 16 is the least friendly to sit against, to set by, because of the depth of the body. The body has to be depth to accommodate that gap. And because the body of the lathe is deep, it's really hard to get close to in a seated position. So the universal stand does not fit the Sweet 16. And I would just say that of the 3 lathes we make, it's the least friendly for the seated turner. Although we do have one guy who turns from one in a wheelchair, and he just sits at the wheelchair with his wheelchair at 90 degrees to the lathe bed, or I should say parallel to the lathe bed, and he reaches over and turns this way. And he's quite satisfied doing that. To me, it's kind of uncomfortable. And I don't know, I think if he's working on the inside of the bowl, he turns around and works the other way. But he can't approach the machine from the front. He's from either side. That's just something he's adapted to with his particular situation. Any other questions?
One request is to show your new SKUs and negative rake straight.
Oh yeah. I don't have we don't have SKUs made yet, but we do have the negative rake. And gosh, we just bundled up the round nose are all packed up for heat treating. this is our first batch of them. They're going out to heat treat on Monday. So I apologize, the round nose are already packed up, but I can show you the negative rake. I can't show you the negative rake one. There he is. There's our man, Nick. Yeah, so geez, three of them. So you know that we made more than one. So if you want to go to the overhead camera, maybe. Oh yeah, that's good too. That's good too. I got to learn to move my hand where it's supposed to be. So negative rake, as you know, you're really popular these days, and they work really, really well. And so you can see there's a side view of it. And this is our what we're calling our large one. There's going to be, this is 1 inch. This is 1 inch wide. And then there's going to be another one that's inch and 5/16 wide. Excuse me. It's going to be inch and 5/16 wide, and it's going to be I think 3/8 of an inch thick, if I remember correct. This is 5/16 thick. So this is the first one, and these will be M42. All of these are going to be M42, and we're also going to have a brand. We're also going to have a line in M2. So a lot of these we're going to have available in both steels, and then it'll be at 2 different price points, of course. So we're pretty excited about these. So some things that we're doing different. One is that nitriding coating that I talked to you about on the gouges is going to be applied to these too. So when you roll that burr, when you grind the underside of this to raise that burr, you have that extra hard edge, you know, in that burr. And then we're radiusing the edges of the tool. So when you want to roll this up, you're using it as a negative rake scraper, and you want to roll it up and do some shear scraping, the edge of the tool is already radiused to accommodate that, on both sides. And so we think it's going to be a nice, successful tool. And even with the treatment and everything that we're giving it, we should be able to do these at a price point that's competitive with all the other tool manufacturers. Anything else pop up, Todd? Okay. Well, let's go over and let's finish up the grand prize. Now, there's a lot of different hollowing systems on the market. The elbow tool is actually developed by a guy by the name of Stan Townsend down in Oklahoma, and Stan passed this on to Tim Yoder. If you're not familiar with Tim, Tim has a really active YouTube channel, and for 4 years had a woodturning show on public TV on PBS, and that's still available in syndication on PBS's Create channel, their Create network, one of their digital networks. And so you can still catch 4 years worth of shows, and you'll see a lot of people who you would know and like that have been on the show. He's had on as guests, and he's an excellent teacher. Anyway, he's taken over the elbow tool production. So this is a captive hollowing rig, and Tim was nice enough to send us up a set for this as part of the grand prize selection. Along with that, you'll see from Trent Bosch the carving stand that Nick used earlier in this presentation, and it has a 1 inch post that goes right in the banjo as you saw it use it. This one's threaded 1 1/4 8. I'm sure you could talk Trent into an exchange if you have a different size. If you win this, I know he makes 1 inch 8, and he makes 33 millimeters, the metric one. And then there's also an auxiliary little clamp. If you want to bolt this on the side of your workbench, you can put it on the side of your workbench. So it'll go either in your lathe or it can go on the side of your workbench. And so Trent's been making these for a number of years, and these are really, really nicely made. And Nick's nodding his head. He's nodding in agreement. So along with that, just to make sure you remember where we came from, Robust Tools is doing a tool rest and, excuse me, and a robust hat. And the winner for that is Robert Cable. Cable with a K, K-A-B-L-E. Oh, very good. Thank you. Sorry, I got the sheet in front. Nick is waving me off. And so with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming. Just a brief reminder, if you order anytime this weekend, if you order any accessory, do free ship for free shipping. And then there's 400 off an American Beauty, 300 off a Sweet 16, and 200 off of a Scout. Check out without payment on that. Pay with a check, get an additional 3% check discount. And if you've got questions about your lathe, about the details of the order, just get in for the base machine and then we'll work that out. And then I know there's free shipping on the accessories, but sorry, no free shipping on the lathes. That will be at cost. If there's any final questions, now's the time because we're just about to wrap it up here in scenic downtown Barneveld, Wisconsin at Robust Tools.
There are some late ones here. What degree for negative rake?
The top is at 20 degrees. So the top of the tool is ground down at 20 degrees and the bottom angle is 45. Yeah, so here we go. Nick just handed me that. I'm working in the same camera. So this top angle is 20, the bottom angle is 45. Okay.
Do all the lathes have the same clamping system for the tool rest?
No, actually the question is, do all the lathes have the same clamping mechanism for the tool rest? And the American Beauty and the Sweet 16 both use a clamp method. So they use this pinch clamp. Am I still on this? Yeah, yep. So they use this pinch clamp. And what happens is as you tighten the handle, these bushings close up and pinch against the tool rest. And this system's been around like forever. And back in the days when Powermatic was made in the United States, they used to use this system. And then that's the original 3520. And then on the A and B, they went to go to the simple grub screw from the side. But then on the C now, they've reintroduced this. They went back to this bushing system. So they're seeing the light. They're going back to the future and doing a really good system. If my cell phone camera is still up, I'll show you what we do different. Is camera 4 still on?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you look at the hole here, I hope you can see this. Yep. This hole isn't round. Flats. Here. And I apologize. Using the cell phone isn't really good resolution. It's actually, if you go on our Scout page, I think there's a picture of this somewhere in the details on the Scout. So there's a flash here and there's a flash here, so that when you tighten a screw down, it's pushing the tool rest against these two flats. So that gives you 3 points of contact. And that's a lot better than just having a round hole here where you actually only have 2 points of contact. With a round hole, you have the screw and then you have a line of contact opposite it. These two flats, you've got 3 points of contact. This system actually goes back to its antique. I have an antique lathe out in what we call the annex, garage shed that we've got out here. I got an antique lathe on there from, it's got a patent date of 1867 on it. And that lathe has that style of banjo, it has this 3 point contact. So back in the 1860s, they were using this style. And it's a very, very effective way of doing it. And it's actually quite a simple way with CNC machines to make a hole that dimension, that benefit from it. Long answer, but hopefully that sheds some light on it. Anything else?
One question on the tool. If the user grinds the top and bottom of the negative rake scraper, what happens to the nitride at cutting it?
Well, okay, if you grind the top, you're gonna take that nitride finish off, of course. So you want to just do your grinding. You want to just do your grinding on the bottom, you know. So when you get that in the right spot there, still on my handheld. So you'll want to grind that 45-degree angle and leave the top alone. And there's quite a bit of life on that before you get past the nitriding. You know, there's a long bevel on that, and you got a long life on that tool before you get past the nitriding. And even then, it's the base metal is going to be M42, so that's pretty good steel. So you'll still have a good unit. There you can see Todd, in case you forgot what Todd looks like. There, oh, now you took me off. Okay. Yeah, you changed the camera. Okay. Any other questions?
Request for Nick is to furnish a vendor list of the products that you use.
Oh, well, let Brent have a list of the products I use.
I'll email that out. Nick says he'll give a list of the products that he used, and I'll email that out along with the announcement about the recording of this. Okay. Well, Nick, thanks you. I thank Nick.
My pleasure.
I thank Nick.
I haven't looked this tidy. Oh, I should have tucked my shirt in. But I haven't this tidy for a while. Just
there we go. Yeah, I'll go like that. Okay, and thanks to Todd for running the camera and coming in and working on a Saturday. Yeah, thanks to Nick for making the trip up. He's got 2 more days of teaching.
It's a pleasure. Great to be in where everything happens where it's made. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's good fun.
And with that, Todd, let's wrap this up. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Stay safe.